Happy New Year to all our amazing Paranormal M viewers. Can you believe it's already 2026? Wishing you a year where all your hopes and dreams come true. Thank you so much for all the love and support. You truly mean the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos. Alright, let's kick off the new year and dive into our next mysterious adventure together. So, this happened a long time ago, back when I was about 15, maybe 16. I can still feel the heat of that summer in my memory, like the air itself was sticky. Me and my buddy, his name was Rico back then, used to roam the neighborhood pushing this beat-up mower like we owned the place. We'd knock on doors, offer to cut lawns for cash, and honestly, it worked. Most kids were begging their parents for movie money. We were out there hustling for it. I used to go solo at first, but after a couple situations that made my stomach turn, getting chased off once, and another time a guy trying way too hard to get me to step inside his house, I decided I wasn't doing that alone anymore. Rico was about a year older than me, a little bigger, louder voice, the kind of presence that makes people behave. Plus, I'd split the money with him if he helped. Fair deal. We usually charged $10 for a full yard, front and back, and if you hit even 2 or 3 houses, you felt rich. That meant weekends were covered. Arcade tokens, cheap burgers, maybe a matinee if we were lucky. It wasn't glamorous, but it was freedom. Finding yards wasn't always easy, though. We got strategic. We'd look for older folks first, usually the safest, and honestly the kindest. You could spot them by the way the house looked cared for, or the car out front, like an old Buick with a handicap tag hanging from the mirror. And the older people? They'd tip. Or they'd hand you a cold drink like you'd just survived a war. Sometimes they'd send you home with a cookie wrapped in a napkin and a story about back in my day, when somehow every hill was steeper and every winter storm hit hardest on school mornings. You know how it goes. Anyway, one afternoon, midsummer, late June or early July, we're walking and we see this house. And I mean, this house. The grass wasn't just tall, it was wild, like it had swallowed the yard whole. The bushes were crawling up the porch like they were trying to get inside. The whole place had this abandoned vibe. Quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful, more like the kind of quiet that makes your skin listen. Rico slowed down and goes, "Man, I don't know." And I'm acting tough, of course. I'm like, "That yard is a gold mine." I flash him 3 fingers and whisper, 30, like I'm negotiating with the universe. He hesitates, but he goes up anyway. I'm hanging back, leaning on the mower handle, trying to look casual. Then Rico freezes on the walkway. I'm about to laugh at him, until I see why. There's an old man sitting on the porch, tucked into the shadows like he'd been there the whole time. We didn't even notice him at first because of how overgrown everything was. Rico turns and comes back fast, eyes wide, and he whispers, "He's just sitting there. He won't say anything." And I'm annoyed, because I'm 15 and I think I know everything. I tell him, "Dude, you have to speak up. Some old folks can't hear." So I go up there with him, all swagger, like I'm about to teach a masterclass in door-to-door lawn sales. Up close, the man looks rough. Not mean, just worn down. He's wearing these old striped overalls and heavy brown shoes like he dressed up just to sit on that porch. His head is bald, his forehead is lined deep, and his hands, resting on his knee, are speckled with age spots. His nails are long and jagged, like nobody's trimmed them in a while. His whole face had this exhausted sadness to it, like life had been chewing on him. But the creepiest part wasn't the clothes or the nails. It was his eyes. They weren't focused on us. They were like pointed through us. I clear my throat and go, "Hi, sir." Nothing. So I raise my voice. "Hello, sir." Still nothing. Not even a blink. No response. No nod. No get lost. Nothing. I glance at Rico and he gives me this look like, "Please, can we leave?" So I take a step back and go, trying to stay polite. "All right then. Have a good one, sir." And that's when the old man moves. He stands up slow, like his joints don't want to cooperate. He turns his head toward Rico first, then toward me. And when he looks at me, my stomach drops. Because now I can see his eyes clearly, and they're this pale, cloudy, milky white, like glass that's been left out in the sun too long. He doesn't say a word. He just turns, walks into the house, and shuts the door behind him. Rico leans in and whispers, "What do we do?" And I, because I'm still clinging to confidence like it's a life vest, I say, "We wait. He's probably getting money." So we wait there by the mower, trying to act normal, but it's not normal. Rico keeps talking about the eyes, and I keep pretending it's fine. Like, yeah, people get cataracts, it happens. But even as I'm saying it, I don't believe myself. We start doing the math, how we'd split the 30, whether we should have asked for more. And then, pow! A sound like a gunshot cracks through the air. We don't think, we don't talk, we just bolt. We take off so fast we leave the mower sitting right there, gas can, oil bottle, everything, like it never belonged to us. We don't stop running until we're around the corner, out of sight, hearts pounding so hard it hurts. And when we finally catch our breath, Rico goes, "How are we supposed to get the mower back without dying?" So we do the only thing we can think of. We knock on a neighbor's door. This woman answers, and when we tell her what happened, she gets this confused look and says she hasn't seen anyone at that house in forever. She thought it was empty too. She calls the police, and within minutes, like shockingly fast, cops roll up. Several cars, lights, radios going. We tell them everything. The porch, the silence, the old man, the clothes, the eyes, the gunshot. At first, they treat it like the guy just fired a warning shot to scare off kids. But even the cops can't ignore how neglected the place looks. The whole thing shifts from old man being angry to something's wrong here. A few officers go inside while we watch from the street, standing next to a neighbor's mailbox like we're invisible. They're not inside long. They come back out looking weird. Not panicked, just rattled. Like their brains are trying to relabel what they just saw. One officer walks over and goes, "You boys say this happened today?" We both nod hard. "Yes, sir." Then he asks if we went inside. We tell him no. He asks again, more serious, like he's trying to catch us in something. No, no, no. Then an unmarked car shows up. A guy in plain clothes goes in, comes back out, and walks straight toward us. He introduces himself as a detective. He asks for our story again, and we tell it again. He asks what the man was wearing again, and we tell him again. Then he says something I'll never forget. He goes, "I'm not going to arrest you if you went into that house. I just need the truth." And we're like, "We didn't." And he pauses, looks at us, and says, real quiet, "What you're telling me and what's inside doesn't match." My throat went dry. He says there is a man inside wearing the exact outfit we described, but the man had been dead for a long time. Months. Me and Rico just stared at him, like our brains had stopped taking in information. I remember thinking, that's impossible. He stood up. He looked at me. He walked inside. We eventually got permission to grab our mower and leave. They didn't want us lingering. Honestly, neither did we. But we still watched the story when it aired. They said the man had died from a self-inflicted gunshot. They said there was a dog found in there too, also dead. And they said the body had been there for around half a year, decomposed so badly it was... I don't even like repeating it. It didn't feel real. It felt like something you'd hear in a horror movie and roll your eyes at. But it was real. And the part that messes with me the most is that porch moment. Because I swear to you, hand on my heart, we talked to someone sitting in that chair. We heard him shift. We watched him stand. We watched him go inside. After that, I was done. No more mowing. No more knocking on doors. No more trying to earn weekend money by walking up to strangers' houses. Between the people who yelled, the people who invited you in a little too eagerly, and then that, whatever that was, I'd had enough. Sometimes you don't need proof to know something happened. Sometimes your body remembers first. And even now, all these years later, when I smell freshly cut grass in the heat of summer, part of me still thinks about that yard, and that porch, and the man who didn't answer until it was way too late. Okay, so I've had cats in my life for as long as I can remember. Like, always. And I didn't realize until I was older how much that mattered. How much it shaped the way I feel safe in the world. When I was about 7, my mom had 2 cats, Milo and Dottie, and they both died really close together. I remember being sad, mostly because she was sad, but I didn't really understand what death meant yet. I just knew something important had gone missing from our house, and nobody could bring it back. Around that time, my brothers, Evan and Cole, were absolute chaos. Just little tornadoes in sneakers. And I was the tag-along, the one trying to prove I could keep up, even when I was terrified. The 3 of us got into trouble more than once back then. Nothing glamorous, just the kind of dumb kid stuff that somehow always spirals into, how are we explaining this to an adult? There was this old place at the edge of our neighborhood, an ancient-looking colonial farmhouse, half sinking into weeds, the kind of house you know you're not supposed to go in. It was condemned, windows busted, boards on the doors, paint peeling like dead skin. And of course, my brothers and their friends decided exploring it was going to be the highlight of their day. I didn't want to go. I was scared, but I was more scared of being left behind, so I followed them anyway. Inside, it smelled like damp dirt and mothballs, like the floor had been wet for years and nobody ever opened a window. There were old belongings everywhere, dusty piles, furniture with sheets on it, little bits of someone's life just abandoned. My brothers and 2 of their friends, Ty and Mason, a pair of twins who always moved like they had one shared brain, ran straight upstairs like it was a game. I didn't. I stayed near the front, right by the doorway, kind of hovering in what I think used to be the living room. I remember staring at the staircase, just waiting for someone to come back down and tell me it was fine. And then I heard it, a loud bang from upstairs, like wood snapping or something slamming hard against the floor. Immediately, Evan shouted Cole's name, sharp, scared, and suddenly the whole air in that house changed. You know that feeling when your body knows something before your mind can explain it? My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. The hair on my arms lifted like I'd rubbed a balloon on my sweater. That prickly, electric feeling spread up my neck and across my shoulders. And I tried to move. I tried. But my legs didn't listen. It was like the house had decided I was staying put. And that's when I saw him. Not a person. Not really. A tall figure in this shredded trench coat and a top hat, like an old-fashioned, almost Lincoln-looking hat. But his face was wrong. Long, stretched, like someone had tried to draw a man from memory and got the proportions horrifyingly off. And his eyes, I swear to you, his eyes didn't just look dark. They looked hungry, like they were made of heat. The room felt warmer in seconds, heavy, like the air turned into something you had to push through. Then, out of nowhere, there was fire. a sudden flare from upstairs, and smoke curling down the staircase. Later, everyone argued about how it started. The twins blamed my brothers. My brothers swore they didn't do it. All I know is, panic took over. I heard feet pounding, someone yelling, bodies rushing down, and then the front door slammed as they bolted outside. And nobody realized I was still in there. I could hear Cole outside, calling my name, my real name, shouting it like he'd finally noticed. I screamed back, begging him to come in, but he didn't. Instead, something else came. I still don't know where it came from, whether it lived in that house or belonged to someone nearby, or was just, honestly, sent. A cat. This cat came flying past me like a streak, just a blur of fur and purpose cutting between me and that figure. And the moment it did, the trenchcoat man was gone. Not fading, not running, just gone, like a light switching off. And the heaviness lifted, instantly, like someone unhooked a chain from my ribs. My legs worked again. I ran. I ran out that front door so fast I don't even remember touching the steps. I hit the yard and my brothers grabbed me, and we all took off down the street as sirens started wailing closer. We watched the house burn from a distance, orange flames eating it like it was paper. And the whole time, all I could think was, where is that cat? I would have taken it home. I would have tried. I was the kind of kid who always wanted to rescue things, even when we didn't have room or permission. Not long after that, we got a cat anyway. His name was Buttons, black and white tuxedo cat with this smug little face like he knew he owned the place. We had him for years. He was family. He was mine. Eventually, we moved to a different town. Buttons became an indoor-outdoor cat, mostly because he couldn't stand our big dog, an old Rottweiler mix named Diesel. And one day, Buttons got into a fight with another animal. He came home hurt, got sick, and we had to put him down. That loss hit different. I understood it by then. I felt it deep. A few weeks later, my parents went camping, and they left me home alone. I was maybe 13. It was the 90s. People did that back then without thinking too hard about it. My brothers were older, coming and going, but I was alone in the house most of the time. I was vacuuming, trying not to cry, trying not to think about Buttons. There was a mirror in our hallway that had been glued to the wall so hard my dad once tried to remove it and couldn't. I watched him smack it with a huge hammer, and it didn't even crack. It was like the thing was meant to stay. So I'm vacuuming, I glance up, and my reflection startles me. Just that quick jump you get when you catch movement unexpectedly. And then, I saw him. Not in the mirror, in the reflection of the front bay window, inside the mirror. That trench coat shape, that top hat, standing where he absolutely could not be. My whole body went cold and hot at the same time. That same heavy pressure dropped onto me, that same sense of heat and wrongness. I whipped around to look at the actual window, and Diesel, the dog, started growling. Low and mean, like he could see what I couldn't. And right then, my brother Evan pulled into the driveway. His headlights hit the front window, and the light warped the reflection. And it vanished, like it had been pulled out of the room. I've seen it a few times since then, 3 more times over the years. And here's the part that gets me. Every single time I saw it, I didn't have a cat. But when there's been a cat in my home, when I've had that warm little body curled up somewhere, watching, listening, present, I don't see it. I don't feel it. The house feels guarded. I know some cultures believe cats are protectors, like they stand at the edge of the spirit world, like they notice what we miss, and they'll step between you and something that wants to get too close. And look, maybe it is trauma. Maybe it's something in me that got wired wrong in that burning house when I was little. But it happened to me. I felt it. I saw it. I lived it. And I've adopted 6 cats over the last couple decades. I'll keep doing it. I'll never not have a cat. Because whether it's spiritual or psychological, whether it's protection or comfort, I'm not taking that chance. Not again. So, I was maybe 7 years old, still in grade school, and I swear I ran into something that I still can't properly explain. Back then, I'd get home around 3-ish, and for about 40 minutes, I had the house completely to myself. My older brother, let's call him Eli, was a good bit older than me, so he always came home later. One afternoon, I did what I always did. I dropped my backpack by the door, wandered into the living room, and flopped onto the couch to start my homework. And right there, between the living room and the kitchen, we had this ancient wall phone. Like one of those beige, why do we still have this phones? It worked though. Somehow it always worked. I didn't have a phone of my own, obviously, and my mom had this thing where she'd hide the TV remote until chores and homework were checked. So the house was just quiet. Not cozy quiet. That thick, empty quiet where you can hear your own breathing. I'm in the middle of a math worksheet when the phone suddenly rings, and I mean it exploded into the silence. I jumped so hard my pencil flew off my lap. I remember staring at it like it had done something wrong. But I also didn't want it to keep ringing, because that felt worse somehow, like the whole house was announcing that I was alone. The phone was up high, so I dragged one of the kitchen chairs over, climbed up, and picked it up with my heart hammering like I was doing something illegal. "Hello?" I said. Nothing. Just blank. I tried again. "Hello? Hi?" Still nothing. No breathing, no static, nothing that felt human on the other end. Just this dead, empty line. After a few seconds I hung up, and I stood there on the chair for a moment like, okay, weird. Then I climbed down and went back to my homework. And honestly, for maybe a minute, I convinced myself it was just a wrong number or some glitch. Then I heard a sound. At first it was so faint I thought maybe it was outside, like wind against the house or a branch scraping something. But it wasn't steady like wind. It was irregular, like something trying to be quiet. I stopped writing and just listened. And after a few seconds, I realized it was coming from the kitchen. I didn't get up. I didn't even shift on the couch. I just sat there staring forward, like if I stayed perfectly still, whatever it was wouldn't know I was there. Then it changed. This is the part that still makes my stomach tighten. It became this soft, wet, whispering sound, like someone murmuring through their teeth. And then this other noise layered over it, like someone pushing air through their mouth in little bursts. The closest thing I can compare it to is that gross sound kids make when they blow spit through a straw. Except slower, closer, like it was right there in the kitchen with me. I remember my whole body going cold. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel curious. I felt small, like the house had suddenly gotten bigger and I was the only living thing inside it. And I started doing this thing kids do when they're terrified. I got loud. I started crying, and then I started yelling, half sobs, half angry shouts, like volume could protect me. Like if I sounded big enough, whatever was in the kitchen would back off. It felt like it went on forever, but it probably wasn't. It was probably a minute, maybe 2. And then, thank God, I heard the front door open. My brother Eli walked in, and I basically collapsed into relief the second I saw him. He took one look at my face and was like, "What happened?" And I spilled it out. The phone ringing, the silent line, the sounds afterward, the whispering, the weird, airy blowing noise from the kitchen. He listened, then shrugged like it was nothing and said, "You're just freaking yourself out." So when people say, "Oh, your imagination," it's like, okay, but imagination needs ingredients, and I didn't have any. All I had was a silent house, an old wall phone that rang when it shouldn't have, and sounds from the kitchen that felt way too real to be made up. And I know this sounds dramatic, but I'll tell you the truth. I've never forgotten it. Not once. Even now, all these years later, I still don't know what made those noises. I just know what I heard, and how alone I felt hearing it. So, this happened when I was around 10. Every summer back then, I'd basically move into my aunt's place for weeks at a time. Not a normal house either, more like this big, creaky summer home right by a lake, with the forest starting just beyond the backyard. The kind of place that smells like pine needles and old wood, and at night, it gets so dark it feels like the trees are leaning in closer. The day before this happened, I'd been going non-stop, running outside all day, swimming until my skin felt wrinkly, just completely burning through every ounce of energy I had. I crashed early, like embarrassingly early, and then I woke up in the middle of the night. It was around 4:07 in the morning, give or take. I remember because the glow of the clock felt weirdly bright in that dark room. My mouth was so dry, like I'd swallowed a handful of sand. I sat up and started feeling around for water. Maybe a bottle, maybe a cup, anything. Nothing. So I finally sighed and got out of bed, shuffling into the hallway. I flicked the light on, and right away my aunt's dog, his name was Jasper, came padding out like, "Oh, you're up? Cool, I'm up too." He was this sweet, sturdy dog, not scary at all, but he took his job seriously when it came to noises at night. I scratched his ears for a second, and then I started toward the stairs. Jasper followed right beside me, nails clicking on the floor. Okay, so picture the downstairs layout with me. The staircase led out into this main room. Off to the left, there was this long corridor, storage closet on one side, bathroom on the other, and the front door all the way at the far end. And off to the other side, kind of open and wide, was the kitchen, like the house was holding its breath in there. It was still really dark, but the sky had just enough faint gray in it that you could see shapes. I'm about halfway down the stairs when Jasper stops. Not fully stops, more like his whole body goes stiff. Then he starts growling, low and steady, aimed straight toward that corridor on the left. At first, I didn't even react. I was half asleep and thirsty, and I figured maybe he heard a mouse or something. But the growling got stronger, more serious. That deep, warning kind. So I turned my head. And I swear to you, there was someone standing there. But someone doesn't really describe it right. It was shaped like a person. Head, shoulders, arms, everything. But it was completely black. Not like wearing dark clothes black, like the absence of light. No face, no details, just this solid human outline where a human shouldn't have been. I froze so hard I felt like my bones locked. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I didn't even blink on purpose because I was afraid I'd look away and it would suddenly be closer. Jasper kept growling. He didn't move toward it. He just stood his ground like he was warning it, and maybe warning me too. The shape stood there for what felt like forever, but it was probably 5 seconds. And then, it lifted its arm. I honestly can't tell you if it pointed at me or waved. It was such a surreal little motion, calm, almost casual, which somehow made it worse. Like it wasn't startled that I saw it, like it expected to be seen. Then it turned, slowly, toward the storage closet, and it went inside. just like that. The second it disappeared, my body finally remembered how to work. I bolted back up the stairs so fast I almost slipped. Jasper came with me, still tense, still keyed up, so I just stood there, arguing with myself, trying to be brave. And then I had the dumbest, bravest idea. I'm going to check the storage room. I started back down, but this time I turned on every light I passed, every single one, like I could build a little shield out of brightness. Jasper stayed so close he was practically glued to my leg. When I got to the corridor, I moved slowly, swallowing hard, and I opened the storage door. Nothing. Just the smell of old cleaning supplies, some stacked boxes, random stuff. No person, no shape, no anything. I slammed the door and ran back upstairs again, heart banging so hard it hurt. That's when I finally woke my mom. I told her everything in this rushed, trembling mess. How Jasper growled, how it stood there, how it lifted its arm, how it went into the storage room. My mom listened, but her face had that expression adults get when they're trying to be kind, but they don't really believe you. Later, she mentioned it to my aunt, and it was exactly what you'd expect. Oh, you were dreaming. It was a shadow. Kids imagine things. All that. And honestly, even now, part of me understands why they said that. But here's the thing that keeps me from brushing it off completely. Years later, like years, my older brother told me something. He'd been there that same summer too, but he was sleeping in a separate little guest cabin on the property, so he didn't know anything about what happened to me that night. That morning, after everyone was up and moving around, he went into the main house kitchen to grab breakfast. He told me he was sitting there eating cereal when he suddenly felt this presence next to him, this heavy, ugly feeling. And the only word he could think of was evil. Not scary, not creepy, just wrong. Then, out of nowhere, his vision went completely black. Not blurry, not dim, just pitch black, like someone flipped a switch behind his eyes. He said it lasted about 5 seconds. And then his sight came back like nothing happened. The horrible feeling vanished too. He was freaked out enough that he went to doctors afterward, just to be sure he wasn't having some kind of neurological issue. And they found nothing. Completely normal. So yeah, I still don't know what I saw on those stairs. I still don't know what happened to my brother in that kitchen. I'm not someone who goes around insisting everything is paranormal. I'm honestly kind of skeptical by nature. But Jasper growled. Jasper reacted like there was something real there. And my brother, without knowing my story, experienced something strange that same morning in the same house. So a part of me, just a small part, can't help but think it wasn't nothing. And every time I picture that hallway, I still remember how that shape lifted its arm, like it was acknowledging me, like it was saying, "Yeah, you saw me." So this happened a few years back at one of my old jobs, and I still get that little chill in my shoulders when I think about it. Back then, I'd just graduated and landed this sweet role at my college. My title was something like Robotics Lab Specialist. Basically, I spent my days working with collaborative robots, tuning their behavior, and messing with their vision systems until they behaved like they had some common sense. One project I got assigned was this autonomous rolling platform we dug out of storage. It used a depth camera, one of those older motion-sensing units from that era, plugged straight into a laptop. The setup was pretty straightforward, a normal camera view plus skeletal tracking that turned people into these simple stick figure outlines. It wasn't supposed to be artistic. It was just a clean, functional interpretation of a human body. The catch was where the robot lived. It had been stashed for years in this tiny mezzanine office above the machine shop, like right above it. The building itself wasn't ancient, but it was part of the oldest section of campus, and the whole area had that forgotten wing feel. The office was cramped, dusty, and weirdly frozen in experience. Old carpet, stale air, outdated posters curling at the corners. It was the kind of room that made you feel like you shouldn't talk too loudly, like you might wake something up. And I'm not being dramatic. When I was poking around, I opened a closet and found a half-crushed snack box with an expiration date from a decade earlier. Just sitting there, like someone meant to come back after lunch and never did. Anyway, one afternoon, I powered the robot up to check the video stream and test how well it could follow a person without getting distracted. Simple test. I stood in front of it, waved my arms a little, did a couple hops, just trying to give it an obvious target, then started walking around the room. It tracked me perfectly at first. Smooth, responsive, exactly what I wanted. Then, right in the middle of the test, it just stopped. Not like it lost me and searched, not like it glitched out and reset. It stopped tracking me and slowly turned its head toward a completely empty patch of air near the far side of the room. I remember laughing because it felt so dumb. Like, really? Come on. I stepped into its view again, hopped, waved, did the whole, "Hello, I'm right here" thing. Nothing. The robot refused to acknowledge me. It was locked onto that blank spot like it had just seen the most fascinating thing in the world. So I checked the laptop screen, thinking maybe the camera feed was bugging out. And there it was, a stick figure, clear as day, standing where the robot was staring. I wiped the lens. I shifted the angle. I rebooted the program. I even moved a chair into that area, thinking maybe it was interpreting something weird. The stick figure stayed. Eventually, I just quit for the day. I told myself it was a visual artifact, some depth map nonsense, and that tomorrow it would be gone. The next day, I came back up to the mezzanine office, already kind of uneasy, but trying not to be ridiculous about it. I powered everything up again, and this time, I didn't even test tracking. I just sat down and started combing through the code, figuring I'd adjust some thresholds or change how it classified a body. Out of nowhere, the robot chirped its little "target acquired" sound, like it had found a person, and it yanked hard enough that I had to grip it tighter. It twisted in my hands to stare past me, toward the wall and the window behind my shoulder. I turned to the laptop screen. 2 stick figures. Not fuzzy, not half-formed. 2 distinct tracked bodies. One looked like someone was casually leaning back against the wall, arms relaxed. The other was positioned like it had its elbows up and its chin resting on the windowsill, like someone peering in, watching. And that windowsill was way off the ground. The office hung over the machine shop floor. The window looked out across open space and equipment. There was no ledge outside, no catwalk, no balcony, no "maybe someone's out there." Nothing. I slowly turned around to see what it could possibly be seeing. The moment I did, the robot played its little disappointed sound, lost target, and both stick figures vanished from the screen like someone had flipped a switch. There was nothing behind me. Nothing at the wall. Nothing at the window. No moving shadows. No reflections. No dangling coat. No weird shapes. No explanation that made me feel better. I just stood there for a second, completely still, listening to the hum of the building and the faint, distant sounds from the shop below, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I'd seen. And look, I'm not saying I know what it was. I honestly don't. But whatever the robot thought it was tracking, it felt specific. like it wasn't guessing, like it was recognizing something that matched human too well to ignore. After that, I stopped going into that room alone. Full stop. I'd wait until someone else was free, or I'd bring a friend up with me under the excuse of, "Hey, can you spot me while I test this?" I never saw the stick figures again quite as clearly as that second time, but I never forgot how the room felt. And I definitely never forgot the way that robot acted like it wasn't empty up there. Like I just couldn't see what it could. So, this happened in my village a few years ago, and even now, when I think about it, my stomach still tightens the same way it did that morning. I had to leave early for a trip. One of those days where you don't even feel fully awake, you're just moving on autopilot. So I set an alarm for 4:15 a.m. The house was quiet, the air was cold, and the whole world outside felt like it was holding its breath. I went to the wash area and started brushing my teeth, half asleep, staring at nothing in particular. When I heard it, dogs. Not barking, howling. Long, stretched-out howls coming from far away, like they were echoing off empty fields. Where I'm from, people have this old belief. When dogs howl like that, it means one of two things. Either the spirit of death is moving through the village, or someone nearby is about to die. And the scary part is, sometimes people say it because they've seen it match up before. I remember standing there with the toothbrush still in my mouth, frozen, listening. And then my heart started beating harder because the sound wasn't staying far away. It was getting closer. I slowly turned my head toward the road. In the dim light, barely any light really, I could make out shapes moving. A small pack of dogs, 5 or 6, maybe more, weaving in and out of each other. And they weren't just howling into the air, they were circling something. That's the part that still makes my skin crawl. Because the dogs were clearly following something in the middle, but I couldn't see what it was. It wasn't like there was a person walking calmly, or a cart, or anything obvious. Just movement, a presence, and the dogs kept looping around it, howling like their throats were going to split open. As it came nearer, my thoughts got darker fast. I remember thinking, someone is dying. Somebody is about to die. And without even realizing it, I started shrinking back, trying to hide behind the doorway. Like if whatever it was couldn't see me, it would just pass by. The howls were so loud up close it felt unreal, like someone had turned the volume of the entire night to maximum. And it was still dark, the kind of dark where everything looks like a shadow pretending to be something else. It reached right near my house, and I forced myself, just for a second, to look more carefully. I saw the dogs clearly. I saw them circling. I saw there was space in the middle where something should have been. But the thing itself, I couldn't make it out. My eyes couldn't hold it properly, like my brain refused to draw a clear picture. It moved past my house and continued down the road. Then it slowed and stopped right in front of a nearby home, Arjun's house, the boy who lived a short walk away. That moment felt like a scene from a horror film, except it was real, and it was happening in my own street. And then, it turned around. It came back in my direction. I don't care how brave anyone thinks they are. When something like that turns back toward you in the dark with a pack of dogs screaming around it, your body decides for you. I ran. Not a dramatic run, not a heroic run, just pure panic. I rushed back inside and shut myself in my room like a child, breathing hard, listening. After a while, the sounds began to drift away again, fading down the road the same way they came. I went to the window and watched, but I couldn't see anything except darkness and the occasional flicker of movement from the dogs. When it finally went silent, I stayed inside, and I didn't leave. I actually canceled my trip. I told myself I was tired, or it could wait, but honestly, I just didn't want to step outside again. She said, "Arjun is gone." That boy, the one whose house the howling stopped at, had died. Later we found out the details. He'd left home around 5 a.m. and jumped in front of a train. And the reason? The reason made it even heavier. His girlfriend, Mira, had taken her own life just a couple of days earlier. People said he hadn't been sleeping. He hadn't been eating. He'd been walking around like his soul wasn't fully inside him anymore. After that, I couldn't stop replaying the howling in my mind. Because what were the dogs following? At first, I'll be honest, I leaned into the old village belief. I kept thinking, that was death moving through the road. That was something spiritual. And when I told people, some of them laughed and called it superstition. Some rolled their eyes like I was being dramatic. But I kept thinking, I was there. I heard it. I saw it. How do you laugh at something someone actually witnessed? And later, much later, I started reading, trying to find an explanation that wasn't just fear. Here's the most believable thing I found, and it actually stayed with me. When a person is in extreme distress, deep grief, panic, unbearable emotional pain, the body can change in ways we don't always understand. Stress hormones spike, scent and sweat chemistry shifts, breathing changes, the whole system goes into crisis. And animals, especially dogs, pick up tiny signals that we can't. They notice what our human senses ignore. So maybe what the dogs were doing wasn't supernatural at all. Maybe they were sensing a trail of anguish. Something in his body, in his scent, in the air around him. Something that said, this person is not okay. And they followed it. That's the part I hold on to now, because it turns the story into something that matters. If you ever hear dogs howling like that near your home, like they're tracking something, like they're restless and searching, please don't just brush it off. Don't just say, oh, it's nothing, and go back to sleep. Maybe somewhere close by, someone is hurting so badly they can't see any way out. And if you find them, if you check on them, speak to them, sit with them, even for a moment, maybe you'll do what nobody did for Arjun. Maybe you'll pull them back from the edge. So, I should have listened to Father Miguel. I really should have. You know how it is when you're young and you think you're slick, half paying attention, half trying to be seen. That morning in the little mission, I wasn't focused on the homily at all. I was busy catching Marisol's eye from across the pews, smiling like an idiot every time she glanced back. I thought it was harmless, sweet even, like love couldn't possibly invite trouble. After Mass, Father Miguel stopped me at the door. His hand was warm when he shook mine, and he looked at me the way men like him do, like they can see every dumb thought you've ever had. Did you like the sermon today? He asked. I put my whole heart into it. Yes, Padre, I said quickly. It was very good. He didn't let me off easy. What did you like about it specifically? And that's when my mouth betrayed me. I stammered something useless, all of it. Very inspirational. And he gave me this small, patient smile. Thank you, my son, he said. Just remember, I can see a great deal from the pulpit, and you'll learn more about God from me than you will from your sweetheart. I felt my ears burn. I couldn't even look up. Marisol heard him too. She was outside by the hitching rail, arms folded, trying to hide her grin. I walked over, pretending I wasn't smiling back. Have you thought any more about what I asked you? I said. I tried to sound calm, but inside I was shaking. I'd been carrying that question around like a stone in my pocket. She took a breath, then frowned toward the horizon like she could see fear out there in the distance. I have, she said. But people are saying there's fighting again, raids near the southern routes. What if we're not safe? Because, mi amor, I told her, leaning in like my confidence could protect us. They don't come up to my brother's land, and the other families won't cross those hills. They think that place is cursed. We'll be left alone. Her eyes searched mine. I remember that look, half terrified, half glowing. Then she nodded, small and final. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll go with you." We married not long after. Life on the ranch wasn't a song. It was work. An adobe house that was more practical than pretty. Dust in the corners no matter how much you swept. The sheep pressed close at night, so near their smell lived in our hair. Wool and manure, the sharp sourness of animals in a pen. But we were together, and for a while that felt like enough. Until her birthday. I'd saved for months. Not for something useful, no saddle, no tools, but for something beautiful. In town, we'd seen this glass bowl in a trader's stall, shimmering like oil on water. Green and violet, then blue when the sun hit it right. It didn't belong on a ranch. That was the point. When she unwrapped it, she gasped like I'd handed her a piece of the sky. She called it the prettiest thing she'd ever owned. Her eyes got wet, and the way she looked at me, God, it made every hard day feel worth it. That night, I broke my brother's main rule. No big fires after dark. But I wanted to celebrate. I wanted light and laughter and the feeling that nothing could touch us. So I built a bonfire and roasted meat over it, and the stars above us looked endless and indifferent. Marisol went inside to find a place for her new treasure, and that's when I saw them. Eyes. Yellow. Too high off the ground to be a coyote, not an owl, not anything that made sense. My dog, Chico, had been growling low all evening, like he was arguing with the dark. Now he backed away, tail tucked, whining like he didn't recognize the world anymore. I didn't want to leave the sheep, didn't want to look away. So I did the stupidest thing a man can do when he's scared and proud. I threw a stick at the eyes, closer. And there was a smell, suddenly, like the day after butchering, like blood that's had time to sour. Marisol came back outside, smiling, holding the bowl like it was a baby. I found a good place for it. Go inside, I cut in. Too sharp, too fast. Get my gun. She didn't argue. She just moved, quick and quiet, and came back with my musket. The eyes were closer now, a shape behind them. Not a bear, not anything I could name. My heart was punching my ribs so hard I thought it might crack. And then it spoke. Not in some animal sound, not a howl. It spoke like a man. "Why weren't you paying attention in church, Tomas?" Father Miguel's voice, clear as if he were standing beside me. Marisol screamed, this sudden, raw sound that yanked the air out of my lungs. Her whole body jerked back like the voice had touched her. "You should have listened," the thing said again. Still Father Miguel. Calm. Near. "We need to go in," Marisol whispered. She was trembling, teeth clicking. "All right," I said, and we moved toward the door. But something inside me snapped. Anger, maybe. Humiliation. Like I'd been caught misbehaving by the world itself. I didn't ask for this. I didn't deserve this. I raised the musket and fired. The shot tore through the night. The flash lit the yard for a heartbeat, and the eyes vanished. I dragged Marisol inside and slammed the door hard enough the frame shook. For a moment I stood there listening, praying, willing it to be over. Then the sheep started screaming. Not bleating, screaming. By morning, every one of them was dead, torn apart like they were made of paper. The pen looked like a storm had ripped through it. And Marisol was burning up. Fever so fierce her skin looked gray, slick with sweat. She couldn't stop shivering even though she was hot to the touch. Right before she slipped into this restless, awful sleep, she grabbed my wrist and whispered, "Don't stare into its eyes." I wanted to take her to a doctor. The nearest town was a long day by wagon, maybe longer if the road was bad. I started packing anyway, desperate and shaking. But our mule was dead too, ribs torn open like someone had cracked it apart for sport. By the time I had supplies ready, the sun was already leaning west. I told myself we'd leave at dawn, that we'd rest and go when we had light, that maybe it only came when the fire was lit, that maybe it would forget us if we stayed quiet. So I didn't light one. That night came down heavy. No coyotes, no crickets. Even the world's usual noises seemed to step back. At about 10, it started again. "Tomas," Father Miguel called, soft and pious. "Come out and pray with me. If you'd listened in church, you'd know how." Marisol whimpered from the bed. She was awake, barely. I crouched by the window with the musket loaded, knowing deep in my bones it wouldn't matter. Then the voice came closer. "Come out, if you want your dog." My stomach flipped. I had buried Chico myself. I'd seen the flies. I knew what was in that shallow grave. Rage rose up so hot it made me reckless. I threw open the window and fired into the dark. For a blink, the muzzle flash showed something tall, human-shaped but wrong, draped like a traveler, but with no face where a face should be. Just shadow and the suggestion of bone. Then silence. As I fumbled to reload, a new sound began. Claws on adobe. Slow scratches, dragging along the walls like a child running fingertips over a fence. It circled the house, unhurried, like it owned the place. It stopped at the door. 3 knocks. Polite. "I only want to come in and bless your home," it said, still Father Miguel. Serene, holy, mocking. The scratching returned, deeper now, wood splintering. Not pounding, not rushing, just patient destruction, as if time itself were on its side. Marisol pushed herself up beside me, pale as moonlight, clinging to the wall. "Mi amor," I whispered, choking on panic. "It's digging through the door." She swallowed hard. "Then I'll feed it." I stared at her like she'd gone mad. "No, you need to lie down. We don't have another idea," she said, and her voice was so calm it frightened me more than her fever did. "Where's the basket?" "In the corral," I said. "But you can't." She reached up and took the shimmering bowl from the shelf like it was sacred. "Then I'll use this," she murmured. Hands shaking, she filled it with tortillas and stew. The scraping paused. It was listening. Marisol lifted the latch. The night outside seemed to inhale, cold and hungry. She stepped out holding the bowl in both hands. I followed right behind her, musket raised, heart trying to climb out of my throat. "I'm coming out with food," she called into the dark. Silence. Then, in Father Miguel's voice, gentle as a blessing, "Bring it." We turned left. A figure stood just beyond the reach of the firelight, still, robed, like an old wanderer watching us. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Then it moved, not walking, not running. It struck, so fast it didn't feel real. The bowl shattered with a sound like thin ice breaking. Pieces burst outward in a spray of glittering color, flying into the yard. And then it was on us. The sound Marisol made wasn't a scream. It was like the breath got ripped out of her, sharp, final, stolen. Her body folded beside the broken offering like a doll dropped by a careless hand. I tried to run. Claws tore into my back. Something hot filled my mouth. I tasted blood and dirt and terror. But the worst part, the part that still crawls under my skin when I remember, was the voice. Still Father Miguel, still calm. There was an agreement, it said. No home was to be raised here while the rivers kept flowing. That was the last thing I heard. Not the wind, not Marisol, not even my own breathing. Just that voice, like it had always lived in the land and was only reminding me. Now, listen. This is the part that makes people shake their heads and say it's just a story. But time does strange things to places like that. It remembers. More than a century and a half later, A man named Ethan was hiking north of Albuquerque, chasing the rumor of an old settlement he'd read about online. He didn't find the town from the post, but he did find the ruin. Adobe slumped into the earth like it was melting back into the ground, and scattered in the dirt near the threshold, half buried like teeth, little pieces of glass, green, violet, blue, still shimmering when the sun hit them. On the doorframe, deep parallel gouges, too deep, too clean, like something had carved them with intention. Ethan stood there a long time, not moving. He later told people the air felt wrong, like the place was holding its breath. He backed away. He didn't go inside. He didn't touch the glass. And when the wind shifted and turned cold, he told himself it was just the river he'd crossed earlier, still in his bones. Then he turned around and walked away, and he didn't look back, not once. So, I want to tell you something I don't usually say out loud, because it still feels a little strange to admit. My dad died when I was in 7th grade. Technically, he was my stepdad, on paper. But in every way that actually mattered, he was just my dad. The one who showed up. The one who stayed. The one who taught me how to laugh at dumb things and how to stand up for myself without turning mean. And here's the part that makes all of this complicated. I've never been the kind of person who's automatically sure about the afterlife. If anything, as I got older, I got more skeptical. I've lost other people in my family, people I adored, and I don't feel them around. No signs, no chills, no presence, nothing. So for a long time, I figured, that's just how it is. People die and we miss them, and our brains look for patterns because grief is unbearable. But then there's my dad. And I don't really know why. Why him? Why me? Why it shows up the way it does. But I've come to accept that sometimes it does. There are a bunch of moments I could tell you about, honestly, but I'll just give you a few. The ones that still sit in my chest like a weight and a comfort at the same time. The most recent one happened this year. I'd been waiting on a diagnosis for almost 5 years. 5 years of tests that went nowhere, appointments where I left feeling smaller than when I walked in, and this constant background noise of, maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's everything. It started with me getting sick right around the anniversary of my dad's death. Not on the exact day, but close enough that I noticed. Like the calendar was tapping me on the shoulder. I remember thinking, that's weird, and then immediately telling myself, it's a coincidence. Don't make it into a thing. Fast forward to this new doctor's appointment. New place, new building, that sterile waiting room smell. The kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look exhausted. I didn't expect anything. I never expect anything anymore. I actually almost canceled. I was sitting there with my phone in my hand, hovering over the reschedule button, because I was tired. Tired of hoping, tired of being disappointed, tired of getting my own expectations used against me. But I had this feeling, quiet but persistent, like, no, go. So I went. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, the doctor walked in, did the basic questions, looked at my history, and then said, I know what this is. Just like that, no dramatic pause, no shrug, no, let's run another dozen tests. He explained it calmly, like it was obvious, like it had been waiting there the whole time and somebody finally turned the lights on. I sat there blinking like I'd forgotten how, and then it hit me. This appointment was the day before my dad's death anniversary, and it was almost exactly 5 years since the day I first got sick. I walked out feeling dizzy, like my body didn't know whether to cry or laugh or both. I went up to the front desk to schedule my follow-up, and while I'm standing there, a man walks in behind me. I barely noticed him at first. Just another person with a folder, that same worn-out expression everyone has in medical buildings. And then I heard him say his last name. My dad's last name. Not a super common one, not something you hear every day. My stomach dropped, and I turned so fast I probably looked rude. It was my dad's brother, my Uncle Ray. I know how it sounds. Believe me, I do. I stood there telling myself, okay, sure, coincidences happen, but it felt like too many layers stacking up perfectly to be nothing. Like someone had reached across time and said, "You're not doing this alone." And it didn't feel spooky. It didn't feel like a horror movie. It felt personal, familiar, like the kind of nudge my dad would have given me when I was about to back out of something important. Now, dreams are another thing. I don't dream about him often. It's not like he's visiting me every week, giving me gentle reassurance. If anything, it's the opposite. When he shows up in my dreams, it usually means something is about to happen, and I hate that I've learned to recognize that pattern. It's happened 3 times since he died. The first time, I dreamed about him, and the next day his old best friend, Mr. Don, was rushed to the hospital. Everyone kept saying he was going to be okay. You know how people do that, like optimism is a life raft? But I couldn't buy it. I was crying before anyone even admitted it was serious. I felt it in my bones. Mr. Don passed away the following day. The second dream was years later. In it, my dad didn't even say much. He was just there, watching, and I woke up with my heart pounding like it was trying to warn me. That morning, I got a call that someone I loved had been in a bad car accident. The kind where your knees go weak and you can't hear properly for a second because your brain is trying to protect you from the words. And then the third dream. That one was different. That one happened when I was sick, really sick. The kind of sick where you start doing the math in your head, where you're awake at 3 a.m. thinking, if something happens to me, what happens to my kids? In the dream, everything was clearer than usual, like the air had depth to it. My dad looked peaceful, content even. For the first time, he didn't look sad or distant or stuck. He looked like himself, like the version of him I remember from the kitchen on a normal day. And there were other people there, people I didn't recognize, but he seemed to, like he wasn't alone where he was. I ran to him, of course, because that's what you do in a dream when you love someone and you don't get a second chance in real life. And he stopped me. Not harshly, not coldly, just firmly, like, no, not yet. I tried to hug him and he wouldn't let me. And you'd think that would feel like rejection, but it didn't. It felt like protection. Like he was saying, you still have work to do. You still have people who need you. He guided me away in the gentlest way, like he was walking me back to the edge of something. And I woke up with this peace I can't really explain. The kind of peace you don't even realize you're starving for until it's handed to you. I didn't feel cured. I didn't feel magically healed. I just felt steadier, like I'd been reminded that I wasn't allowed to give up. And then there's the moment that still makes my throat tighten every time I try to tell it. When my daughter Lily was born, bringing her home felt like carrying a tiny, fragile miracle into a world full of sharp corners. You know? Like suddenly everything is dangerous. Everything has consequences. I thought everything was fine. But Marcus fell asleep. Just for a minute. He was exhausted. We both were. Somehow, some way, Lily slipped. It wasn't a big fall. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of thing people might brush off as, she's fine. But she landed face down into a pile of soft blankets. And Lily was the kind of newborn who slept like she'd been doing it her whole life. I used to have to wake her to eat. She didn't cry. She didn't startle. She didn't make a sound. She could have suffocated. I didn't know any of this yet. I was in the other room with Noah, and the house was quiet in that late-night way where you can hear the hum of the fridge and your own breathing. And then I heard a voice. Not a noise, not a creak, a voice. It said my name, clear as day, like someone trying to get my attention immediately. And I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in years, but I knew it like muscle memory. My dad. It wasn't coming from the TV. There was no TV on, no radio, no video. Noah wasn't even crying anymore. He was standing right in front of me, hiccuping, calm. The voice sounded like it came from the hallway, and I went cold. I walked toward it, and then it sounded like it came from the bedroom. I remember thinking, that's impossible. And also, weirdly, of course. I opened the bedroom door, and there she was, Lily, face down, too still, wrapped in danger without even realizing it. Marcus asleep in the chair. I snatched her up so fast my arms actually hurt afterward. I turned her over, and she sputtered and blinked and finally made this tiny little sound, like she was annoyed I'd interrupted her nap. She was okay. She was okay, and I sank to the floor shaking, because the version of reality where I didn't walk in right then, I can't even let my brain stay there too long. And after that, silence. I never heard that voice again, not like that. But I didn't need to, because whether it was divine intervention or grief brain pattern seeking or some weird crack in the universe I'll never understand, something got me to that door in time. And if you asked me to prove it, I can't. I know I can't. All I can tell you is what it felt like. It felt like love. It felt like my dad, in the only ways he can reach me now, still being my dad. And maybe that's all I really need to know. So, I don't usually tell this story out loud, because saying it makes it feel real all over again. But I'm going to, just like I'd tell a close friend sitting across from me, because I've carried it long enough. As far back as I can remember, something has been following me. Not every single night, but often enough that I stopped calling it bad luck. It felt like an entity, like something with intent. And it didn't start with claws and blood or anything dramatic like that. At first, it was subtle, almost testing me. When I was about 14, I lived with my dad, my little brother, and a couple of kids my dad's girlfriend had. We'd just moved into this older place outside of town, and I got the upstairs loft because I was the oldest. The stairs were rough, old, squeaky, half wobbly, so my dad and I rebuilt them. Nothing fancy. Fresh boards, screws, solid steps. The kind of new wood that makes a very specific sound when someone walks on it. That's why it messed with me so much the first time I heard footsteps coming up. I remember getting home from school one afternoon, Dad still at work, the whole house quiet. I was upstairs in the loft changing for practice. Baseball, I think. Not football like I usually tell it. And suddenly I hear these heavy steps. Thump, 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 like someone coming up fast. I spun around expecting my brother, expecting anyone. Nobody. I stood there with my shirt half on, heart hammering, listening for the next sound. Nothing. And I told myself, okay, old house, pipes, whatever. But deep down, I didn't believe it. A few weeks later, something happened that I still can't explain no matter how I try. I had to grab the mail before leaving, so I stepped out the front door and left it cracked open behind me, just enough that I could dart back in. I grabbed the envelope stack from the mailbox, turned around, And when I got close, like within arm's reach, the front door slammed shut. Not a gentle swing, a slam. I rushed up and grabbed the knob. It wasn't locked. There was no deadbolt click, no chain, nothing. But it wouldn't open. I pulled hard enough to make my shoulder hurt, like someone was leaning against it from the other side. Except, I was alone. When it finally gave, after what felt like forever, I stood there in the doorway staring at the empty living room, trying to convince myself it was just suction, or a draft, or the door swelling in the frame. Anything except what it felt like. Something messing with me. Then life shifted again. Dad's girlfriend, her 2 kids, and her father moved in. Her dad had just gotten out of prison and was staying with us because he didn't really have anywhere else to go. I remember one night we all went out to eat, everyone laughing, normal family stuff. We came home tired and went upstairs. We fell asleep. And about an hour later, there was this violent bang, so loud it sounded like something exploded inside the loft. I sat bolt upright in the dark, reached for the light, and I didn't get there because I tripped over a dresser. A 4-drawer dresser. It wasn't just tipped. It had fallen and slid out from the wall, like 2 or 3 feet, like someone shoved it. Nobody else was up there besides us. After that, it was never just weird sounds. It became this slow collection of moments. Little things moved, strange knocks, footsteps, cold patches in rooms that shouldn't be cold. Like whatever it was learning how much I'd tolerate. It wasn't just noise anymore. It interacted with me. I'd feel something tug my shirt like a kid trying to get my attention. I'd feel a poke in my side when I was trying to fall asleep. Once, I felt a soft breath in my ear, right against my skin, and I jumped so hard I nearly fell off the couch. And then, it started playing games. One morning I was homesick. Mason was at work, and I thought Talia was home too. I got in the shower, trying to sweat out whatever bug I had. Maybe 5 minutes in, I hear her voice, clear as day, calling from the hallway. "Hey, hurry up, I need the bathroom." I laughed and yelled back over the water. Okay, give me a sec." I turned the water off quick, got dressed fast, hung my towel, and opened the bathroom door to tell her I was done. The house was empty, dead quiet. No footsteps, no TV, no one in the kitchen. I checked the rooms. Nothing. I looked at the time, around 9 in the morning. She'd left for work before 6, and it hit me in this sick, icy way. That voice wasn't hers. Something had copied her, just to see if it could. Even now, thinking about it makes my stomach twist. Like, why do that? What was the point? To isolate me? To prove it could trick me? I still don't know. And then came the night that changed everything. I'd started a new job on second shift at a fabrication shop out near Yoder. I wasn't sleep deprived. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't messing with anything. I even went and got checked out later because I needed someone to tell me I was just stressed or sick or something. Nothing was wrong with me. That night I got home and everything felt normal. No weird noises, no cold spots. I took a shower, went to my room, plugged in my phone, and laid down. I started scrolling, just trying to wind down like anyone does. And I fell into this dream, except it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I was awake inside my own body. I had a nightmare, something unrelated, something that didn't connect to my life at all, and I snapped awake. But the moment I realized I was awake, I fell into another one, then another, 3 times in a row, like something was pushing me under, dragging me back down, each one worse. When I finally broke out of the third one, I was wide awake, staring at my screen, heart racing. I remember thinking, okay, I'm awake now. It's over. That's when my phone cord got yanked out of the wall. Not slipped out, not wiggled loose, pulled. My phone jerked with it, like a hand grabbed the cable and ripped it. I sat up so fast my neck popped. I stared at the outlet and the dangling cord, trying to process what I'd just seen. And then my body froze, like a switch flipped. I couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs. My chest felt tight, like breathing through a straw. The only thing I could move were my eyes, and barely my head, just a little, side to side. I tried to scream, again and again and again. Nothing came out, not even a whisper. At that point, I wasn't thinking about ghosts or stories or movies. I was thinking, I'm going to die in this room and nobody will know why. Somehow, pure panic, pure instinct, I forced myself to roll. It took everything in me, like dragging a body that wasn't mine. I fell off the bed, hit the floor, and tried to get my phone to call Talia. Tried to trigger the voice assistant, anything, but I couldn't speak. I crawled with my arms, only my arms, like my lower half didn't exist. I hauled myself to the door, inch by inch, until I finally got out into the living room, and I turned on everything, every light, every lamp, the TV, anything that could make noise and fill the space. I sat there shaking, exhausted, terrified, waiting for morning like it was the only thing that could save me. I don't know, but I believe in good and evil. I believe there are things we don't see that still see us. And whatever that was, whatever has been around me for years, it didn't feel confused or random. It felt deliberate. And yeah, sometimes I still wake up with scratches or bruises that don't make sense. Sometimes I still feel like I'm being watched in a quiet room. Sometimes I still catch myself listening for footsteps on stairs, even when I know I'm alone. But I'm still here, and I'm not pretending anymore that it's nothing. One day I'll figure out what it is, or why it chose me. And until then, I guess I keep living my life with this shadow just outside the edge of the light. Hey, so before I tell you this, I want you to picture the kind of place where history doesn't feel past, where it feels stuck in the soil. We moved to North Georgia when I was around 10, close enough to the Chickamauga battlefield that people casually talked about it like it was just another landmark. But you could feel it. The woods, the low hills, the mist that sat in the mornings. Everything about that area felt heavy, like the land remembered too much. Our new place was an old farmhouse, deep red paint, a wide porch, 2 bright white columns out front that looked almost too clean against the color of the house. The kind of porch that should have felt welcoming. And honestly, at first, I was thrilled. For the first time in my life, I was getting my own room. No more sharing with my brother, no more listening to someone else breathe while I tried to fall asleep. The first day, while we were hauling boxes inside, I noticed a door up near the hallway ceiling line, like it led somewhere higher. It had a padlock on it. I asked my mom, "What's that?" She squinted at it like she'd never even seen it. No idea. Probably an attic crawl space. The owner must have locked it for safety. And I remember shrugging like, sure, fine. Kids accept weird answers all the time. But then I carried the last box down toward the back of the house, the laundry room. And the second I stepped into that part of the place, my excitement just drained out of me. It was still bright outside, a sticky summer afternoon, the kind where heat shimmers off the driveway. Yet in that back room, I got goosebumps so fast it actually made me angry, because I didn't want to be scared in my new house. I tried to act normal, set the box down, and that's when I saw it. A door. Not on the wall, on the floor, like a trap door from a movie. I'd never seen one in real life. Of course I walked right over. Of course I put my hands on it. There was a latch, stiff, stubborn. I wrestled with it longer than I should have, and then, with a sudden scrape and pop, it gave way. The door swung up, and there was this drop, maybe 3 feet, down into a dirt-floored cellar that smelled like wet earth and old wood. I stared into that opening and felt my stomach turn cold. I slammed it shut so hard the whole floor thudded. I locked it again, hands shaking. and bolted out of that laundry room like something could reach up and grab my ankle. I found my brothers first, Eli and Mason, older than me, already acting like nothing could touch them. I blurted out, "There's a cellar. I opened it." Their eyes lit up like it was Christmas. "Show us." I didn't want to. I really didn't. But I followed anyway, because that's what younger siblings do. Pretend they're brave so they don't get left behind. We opened it again, and they climbed down like it was nothing. The second my shoes hit the dirt floor, that feeling came back, like being watched. Not just watched, studied. Like something in the dark was aware of our breathing, our little movements, the way our voices echoed. I stayed close to Eli, gripping his sleeve. We took a few steps, and the air felt thicker the farther we went, like the cellar didn't want us down there. We climbed back out fast, and right as I lifted my foot over the edge, something brushed my calf. Not like a cobweb, not like a piece of grass, like a hand passing by. But for weeks after that, it followed me, that sensation, those unseen eyes. Sometimes it felt like it came from the hallway, sometimes the corner of the kitchen, sometimes right outside my bedroom door at night, the way silence can feel crowded if you stare into it long enough. And nights were the worst. I was a kid, so of course I hated the dark. But in that house, nighttime felt different, like the dark wasn't empty, like it had weight. One night, I was half asleep, staring at the little plug-in nightlight in my room. It flickered, just once, then again, like something was messing with it. My eyelids got heavy, and I drifted off. And that's when the dream started. Except, it didn't feel like a dream. I saw myself in bed, like I was standing in my own room watching my body sleep. I remember that detail so clearly, the way my blanket was bunched around my legs, the soft rise and fall of my chest. And I started shivering, even in the dream. Then, creak. My closet door, slow, careful, like someone was trying not to be heard. I walked toward it. I didn't want to, but my feet moved anyway, like the dream was guiding me. I opened the closet and reached up for the pull string, because the closet light was one of those bare bulbs. My fingers wrapped around the string, and the floor dropped out from under me. I fell, hard, and landed on dirt. I was in the cellar. I could smell it again, that wet earth rot. I sat up fast, patting my arms, my ribs, my legs, expecting pain. But it was like my body was too shocked to feel anything. Then that sensation hit me, those eyes. I looked up, slowly, because I didn't want to. And there was a concrete slab in front of me that I knew hadn't been there the day we opened the cellar. It looked too solid, too deliberate, like a grave marker made into a table. And lying on top of it was my brother. Not Eli, not Mason, my other brother, the one we lost years before, the one whose name still made my mom's voice catch sometimes if she said it too fast. He looked wrong, gray, sunken, like he'd been underwater for too long, like he'd been kept somewhere he shouldn't have been kept. I felt tears rush up instantly, the kind you can't stop. I backed away, shaking so bad my teeth clicked. And that's when I saw her. Behind the slab, half in shadow, was a woman, tall and thin, hair long and stringy, black tangled with gray. She wore this dirty burgundy cloak, the fabric torn at the sleeves, hanging on her like old curtains. She was bent over the slab like she was guarding it, or feeding on it. I tried to breathe, but it felt like my throat had closed. I took another step back, and in one sharp, unnatural movement, she snapped her head up. Her eyes locked onto me like she'd been waiting. I ran. I ran like my life depended on it, scrambling across dirt, lunging for the cellar steps. I could feel her behind me even though I didn't dare look. I hit the trap door, shoved it up, fumbled, climbed, hands slipping, heart punching my ribs. I burst into the laundry room, sprinted down the hall, slammed my bedroom door, locked it, and dove under my covers like a little kid again, shaking and whispering, "No, no, no," into the blanket like it could protect me. At some point, the panic blurred into exhaustion. I fell asleep again with sunlight creeping into the room, and when I finally woke up for real, late morning, maybe closer to noon, I swung my legs over the bed. That's when I saw them. Bruises, blooming purple, and dirt, real dirt, caked along my calves and ankles like I'd been on my knees in soil. I just stood there staring, because the room was quiet and normal and bright, but my legs looked like I'd been somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. And even now, years later, I can still remember the exact feeling of that back room. Not fear like a jump scare, fear like a warning, like the house was trying to tell me something the moment I walked in, and I didn't listen. You know how every village has that one place people talk about in lowered voices? The spot you can walk past in daylight with a shrug, but once the sun goes down, you suddenly find you've got absolutely no reason to go anywhere near it. Well, where I grew up, that place was a patch of water we always called St. Bridget's Pool. It sits tucked away behind Hawthorne Wood, not far from the edge of the fields, and people swear it's haunted. Not in a silly, ooh, spooky way either. More in that quiet, certain way that makes your stomach tighten even if you don't want to believe it. And honestly, there's one story that's been told so many times around fires and pub tables that it's basically stitched into the village itself. It goes back to just after the war, when rationing still had everyone counting every scrap. Back then, if you could grow a bit extra or catch something from the streams, you didn't waste it. You traded it. You bartered. You kept your family going however you could. There was a lad in our village then. Folk called him Ned Harper, though I don't think anyone even remembered if that was his real name. He was young, wiry, always smelled faintly of river water and earth, and he lived for fishing. He'd haul out trout and eels from the local brooks and take them down to the old inn, the Fox and Lantern, to swap for ration coupons or whatever the landlord could spare. And one evening, as Ned was handing over a couple of slick, silver trout, one of the older regulars leaned in and said, casual as anything, "Ever heard of St. Bridget's Pool?" Ned frowned and shook his head. "Can't say I have." The old fellow's eyes lit up like he'd been waiting for that. "Big fish in there, proper old ones. That pool used to belong to the priory. Monks kept carp in it, way back. It's still up in Hawthorne Wood. Priory's long gone, but the pond stayed. Now, if you're a fisherman, that's like dangling treasure in front of your nose." Ned sat forward immediately. "Big carp, you say? You ever fished it?" The man gave a little snort. "Me? No. You need Sir Malcolm Weatherby's permission. Otherwise, it's poaching. And me and him, we don't exactly share a smile." Weatherby was a local landowner, one of those men with a big house, big fields, and a way of looking through you like you were part of the hedgerow. Ned, though, hadn't ever had trouble with him. So Ned asked the obvious question. "Well, if you've never fished it, how do you know there's carp in there?" The man took a long pull of his ale, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and said, "Because he's turned away everyone who's asked. Why else would he guard it so fierce? He's keeping them for himself. Miserly old sod." That was all it took. Ned couldn't stop thinking about it. So the next Sunday, because church was about the only place you could approach a man like Weatherby without being chased off his land, Ned waited until the service let out. Folks were drifting down the path, talking quietly, shaking hands, buttoning coats. Ned stepped in beside him and said, polite as you like, Sir Malcolm, is it true there's an old pond in your woods? One the monks used to keep carp in? Weatherby didn't even look surprised. He just nodded once. Aye, old Priory Pond. Been there longer than any of us. Ned swallowed, nerves and excitement tangling together. Would you give me permission to fish it, sir? I'd put anything I caught straight back, unless you wanted it brought up to the house. And Weatherby, without missing a beat, said, flat as stone, no. Just like that. No explanation. No, maybe. No, ask again later. Just no. So we asked again the next Sunday, and got the same answer. Then the Sunday after that, same answer. Then he tried bargaining, offered to do chores around the estate, offered to bring Weatherby every eel he caught for a month, promised to be respectful, promised he wouldn't take a single fish. Week after week he kept at it, and week after week Weatherby refused. Until one day, Ned did something a bit bolder. He showed up at the big house itself, and apparently by the third visit in as many days, Weatherby opened the door and actually groaned when he saw him. Oh, for heaven's sake, he muttered. Not you again. Ned stood there, hat in hand, cheeks pig from the cold. I'm sorry, sir, I truly am, but I can't stop thinking about that pool. Please, just once. Say yes and I'll never bother you again. I swear it. Weatherby started to shut the door. Ned rushed on, desperate now. Why won't you let me? Why is it such a problem? And that's when Weatherby snapped, eyes flashing like he'd been poked in a bruise. Because of the prior, he barked. Ned blinked. The prior? Weatherby's jaw worked, like he was trying not to say it, but it spilled out anyway. Years ago, when the harvest failed and folk were starving, the prior refused to share the carp. The villagers dragged him from the priory and killed him. Then they set the place alight to hide what they'd done. Ned, impatient and young, waved it off. That was ages ago. I'm not afraid of old stories. Weatherby's face hardened. You should be. But Ned barely heard him. The word yes was already ringing in his skull. Because finally, whether out of exhaustion, irritation, or some hope that it would be the last of Ned Harper, Sir Malcolm Weatherby threw his hands up and said, Fine, go on then, but don't come crying to me when... Ned was already running. He grabbed his tackle and shot across the fields like he was late for his own wedding. By the time he reached the edge of Hawthorne Wood, the light was starting to thin. One of those evenings where the world goes gray and flat and the trees seem taller than they should. He found the pool easily enough, and he was disappointed right away. It wasn't some shining hidden lake. It was choked with weed, strewn with dead branches, and so murky it looked more like old stew than water. There were only a few clear patches, and through them it seemed shallow, too shallow for anything big to live in. Still, he'd come all that way. So he set up anyway, small float, a bit of worm, thinking maybe he'd at least pull out a minnow or an eel. And the moment that float settled, just a heartbeat later, it vanished. Not a gentle bob, not a curious nibble. It went under like something had grabbed it with a fist. Ned's line snapped with a crack. And suddenly, he wasn't disappointed anymore. He was buzzing. Because that wasn't a small fish. That was something with weight. Something angry and strong and ancient. He sat back against a tree, hands shaking as he started changing his gear. Stronger line, sturdier hook, the sort of setup you'd use if you truly believed you might hook a monster. But in the middle of it, he glanced up. And there, on the far bank, half hidden among the trees, stood a figure. An old man. Or at least, it looked like an old man. He was dressed in ragged, soot-dark robes, hanging off him like old curtains. His face was pale in the fading light, and his eyes, God, his eyes, looked raw and bloodshot, like he hadn't blinked in years. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just stared straight at Ned, like Ned didn't belong in the world anymore. Ned shot upright so fast he forgot where he was and slammed his head into a low branch. Lights out. He scrambled up, heart pounding, squinting into the dark. The far bank was empty. No old man. But beside him, his tackle, his precious rod and kit, was smashed, splintered, like someone had taken a boot to it, or a stone. Ned didn't stop to gather anything. He didn't even grab the pieces. He ran. And that's where the story usually ends, told with a pause and a look around the fire, like everyone's checking the tree line just in case. Now, here's the thing. People round my way still insist most of the mirror carp in our local ponds are descended from those old prairie fish, passed down through generations like a living rumor. And the legend says the prior's cruelty cursed him, that he can't leave, that he's stuck guarding what he refused to share, day and night, making sure no hungry villager ever takes his carp again. As for me, I've been up to St. Bridget's pool once, in daylight. It's exactly how they describe it. Weedy, dark, surrounded by twisted trees and nettles and thorn. The air feels thick there, like the place is holding its breath. I didn't stay long. And at night? No. I'll admit it, I don't go anywhere near it after dark. I've never cast a line into that water either. Because I've never met anyone in the village who's fished it, and I've never met anyone who's spent a night up there. Not and come back laughing anyway. Welcome back to Paranormal M. Can't sleep again, huh? Alright, get comfy, lie down, throw on your headphones, and let yourself sink into some paranormal stories. I hope this helps you relax, or at least keeps you good company. Honestly, this is one of the reasons I love doing this so much. It feels like I'm right there with you, keeping you company in the dark. Thank you so much for sending in your paranormal experiences. Don't be shy, keep them coming. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Alright, let's get into it. You know, every time someone asks me about the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, my mind goes straight back to the summer of 2024. I was living in Belgium back then, but all I could think about was getting out for a while, working somewhere sunny. I became obsessed with finding a summer job in southern Italy. I'm talking hours and hours every day, scrolling through job ads until all the descriptions started to blur together. And then I saw it. This ad that looked, honestly, too perfect. They offered a little studio already ready for the employee, vegetarian food stocked in the fridge, decent working hours, and even said something like, "We value a peaceful environment for our staff." It felt like the universe had finally thrown me a bone. So I said yes. I packed my bags with this mix of excitement and that tiny knot of fear you get when you know you're about to change your life, but you don't know how. Then I flew to Italy, to this tiny village near the coast. When I arrived, I discovered I wouldn't be alone in the apartment. There were 2 other seasonal workers already there, both from different countries, Anna from Spain and Chloe from France. They greeted me with these huge smiles. We hugged like we'd known each other for years, and for a moment I remember thinking, this is it. This is going to be the summer I'll talk about when I'm old. The first day was normal. Kind of wonderful, actually. We spent the afternoon unpacking, joking, planning weekend trips we probably wouldn't even have the budget for. We cooked pasta, shared a bottle of cheap wine, and tried to convince ourselves we weren't nervous about starting work. But even that first evening, something felt off. It's hard to explain. The apartment itself was pretty, white walls, tiled floors, a little balcony with a view of olive trees. But the air inside was heavy, like you'd walked into a room where someone had just had a terrible argument and then left without opening a window. By the end of that first night, all three of us were weirdly emotional. You know when you're exhausted and suddenly everything makes you want to cry? It was like that, but there was no reason. We kept looking at each other going, I don't know what's wrong with me, and laughing it off. But our hands were shaking. We even joked about leaving before we'd started, except it wasn't really a joke. The second day was our first official day at work. That's when we met the boss. His name was Paolo. On paper, he was polite. He didn't yell or swear. But the moment he opened his mouth, something in me recoiled. His energy was cold. That's the only word I have for it. He had this way of looking through you, like he was measuring every move you made. He'd give us instructions without really looking at our faces, like we were tools instead of people. He never raised his voice, but somehow you always felt like you were already disappointing him. By the third day, Anna and Chloe were done. They were both shaking, eyes red from crying. They packed their things in this mechanical way, like they just needed to move, needed to leave. I helped Anna zip her suitcase while she kept repeating, I can't stay here. I can't. They booked the earliest train they could find and just left. And I stayed. I didn't have enough money for a ticket home yet. I told myself I'd work a little longer, get paid at least once, and then decide. Because by then, things had already started. When Anna and Chloe were still there, we'd sometimes hear footsteps in the empty bedroom across the hall. You know that very distinct sound of someone walking on tiles? Heel, toe, heel, toe. Except we'd all be together in the living room when it happened. That's why, after the first couple of nights, we decided to sleep in the same room. 3 mattresses on the floor, like a sleepover, but not the fun kind. More like survival. Sometimes we'd come back from work and find handprints on the inside of the windows. Small, greasy smudges, as if someone had pressed their hands there and then slid them down slightly. We blamed the heat, the humidity, each other. We said, maybe we did that without noticing. But we knew we didn't. Doors would slam when no windows were open. We'd leave our keys on the little table by the entrance and come back to find them on the kitchen counter. Anna would swear she'd left her book on the bed and find it standing upright on the shelf, as if someone had placed it there carefully. We kept saying, it's just the wind, or we're tired, we're imagining things. But it was there, that feeling that something in that place did not want us there. Still, the worst night came after the others had already gone. It was my first night completely alone in the apartment. I remember cooking something simple, just pasta with tomato sauce, and trying to convince myself I was fine, that I was strong, that fear was stupid. And then the chair in front of me moved. Just a little. A soft scrape on the tiles, like someone had nudged it with a knee as they sat down. I froze. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I waited for some rational explanation to appear in my head and nothing. A few minutes later, one of the doors slammed shut so hard the walls shook. I jumped up, checked all the windows. Every single one was closed. And then the handprints started. One by one, on the living room window, on the kitchen window, on the glass door to the balcony. It was like something was pressing from the outside, trying to get in, except the prints were on the inside. I counted 7. I will never forget that number. 7 handprints. I kept telling myself I was tired, that someone must have touched the windows earlier, and the marks just became visible with the humidity. But even as I thought it, I didn't believe myself. Then came the sound that haunts me the most. A violent slam from the end of the hallway, from the room I never used. The cold room, I called it. It was always a few degrees colder than the rest of the apartment. The air in there smelled stale, like something old and damp had been trapped for years. I had locked it on purpose and avoided it as much as I could. But that night, the bang came from there. The light under the door flickered, on, off, on again. I stared down the hallway, heart pounding so hard it felt like it was echoing off the walls. The door started to rattle, not like a breeze, but violently, like someone or something was shaking it from the inside. Then I heard it. Wings. Dozens and dozens of wings. The frantic, dry, fluttering sound, like paper being shredded in the air. I don't even know how I got the courage to go closer, but I did. When I reached the door, I saw the key lying on the floor, a little distance from the lock, like it had been pushed out from inside. I picked it up with shaking hands, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. The windows were wide open. The room was full of insects, moths, mosquitoes, flies, swarming around the ceiling lamp, colliding with each other, hitting the walls. The light flickered as they crashed into it. The air was thick with this humming, buzzing chaos. That was it for me. My body just decided. I grabbed my bag, my phone, whatever was closest, and ran downstairs to Luca's place. I knocked like my life depended on it. He opened the door, half asleep, and I just said, "Can I sleep here tonight?" He didn't ask many questions. He just let me in. I never told him what I'd seen. I didn't want to say it out loud, as if speaking about it would somehow invite it back. A few days later, I ended up talking to one of the older employees, an Italian woman named Teresa. She'd been working there for about 3 months before I arrived. We were on a break, sitting on crates behind the building, and I finally opened up. I told her everything, about the footsteps, the handprints, the doors, the insects. She listened quietly, and when I finished, she just nodded and said, "I'm not surprised." Then she told me her story. When she first arrived, she was completely alone on the property. 3 apartments, all part of the business, in the middle of nowhere. No neighbors, no town noises. The nearest village with a bar or a shop was a 2-hour walk away. There was barely any phone signal, no Wi-Fi. And even then, when she knew for sure that the upper apartment was empty, she would hear furniture being dragged across the floor above her. Heavy pieces, chairs scraping, a table being moved, sometimes in the middle of the night. "There is something wrong with that place," she said quietly. But I needed the job. A week later, Luca and I both decided we were done. He handed in his resignation first. I told myself, "Okay, tomorrow morning. I'll do it tomorrow. Tonight, I'll just breathe." To celebrate that tiny bit of courage, we went out to the only bar in town. It was a small place with plastic chairs and a TV playing some football match in the corner. We drank too much, laughed louder than usual, tried to chase away that sense of being watched that had been sitting on our shoulders for days. We knew exactly what time we left the bar, around midnight. We knew what time we got back to the property. We remembered the way the gravel crunched under our feet, the way the gate squeaked when we pushed it open. We remembered sitting on his tiny balcony for a while, sharing a last drink, talking about what we'd do once we left. These are small details, but you'll see why I'm telling you. The next morning, Luca was packing. Suitcase open on his bed, clothes half folded, his passport on the table. I sat down with my laptop at the kitchen table in his apartment, finally ready to write my resignation email. I opened my inbox and saw a new message from Paolo. The subject line said, "Termination of contract." At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. I opened it, ready to argue, and then I started reading. My blood ran cold. The email described my evening, not just in vague terms, in detail. The time we left the bar, the exact time we entered the property through the gate, that Luca and I sat on his balcony first, that I was drinking a gin and tonic and he had a beer, It mentioned a joke I'd made about the creepy olive trees in the dark. It mentioned what time the balcony light went off. It even mentioned the moment when I said, "Tomorrow I'm finally telling him I quit." And Luca said, "I'll be gone by then." Line after line, it matched what had happened. Things only the two of us could possibly have known. I felt physically sick. I showed the email to Luca. His face went white. We didn't even need to say anything. We just looked at each other and then started searching. We turned my apartment upside down first. Suddenly, so many things clicked into place. That constant feeling of being watched. The way Paolo would mention small things we'd done, little habits, as if he'd just guessed. The way the lights sometimes flickered right when we said something about quitting. The shadows that seemed to move when no one was there. I don't know how much of what happened in that apartment was supernatural, and how much was just a mind slowly cracking under stress, fear, and the knowledge of being watched. What I do know is that after we found those cameras, I didn't stay another night. I booked the first flight I could afford, stuffed everything into my suitcase without even folding it, and left. I didn't go back upstairs to check if I'd forgotten anything. I didn't look up at the windows as the taxi drove away. And Luca and I, we never really spoke about it again. We stayed in touch, but we never brought up that summer, that apartment, or Paolo. Some things, I think, stay with you whether you talk about them or not. But this is the first time I've told the whole story like this. So yeah, that was my perfect summer job in Italy. Beautiful on paper, haunted in every possible way. Okay, so let me tell you about the weirdest thing that ever happened to me at work. This was back in the fall of 2018. I was working as a concierge at a hotel in Houston. Saturday mornings were always slow, especially before 7. The lobby would be quiet, just that low hum from the air conditioning and the occasional sound of someone rolling a suitcase across the tile. Most weekends, it was just me and my favorite bellman, Eli, holding down the fort. We had this little ritual. Slow start to the day, coffee in hand, and a good long chat before the rush of checkouts and guest requests. Eli was really into photography, like actually good at it, not just, "I have an Instagram." So that morning, I pulled up some photos on the front desk computer to show him. They were these gorgeous, moody shots from Big Bend out in West Texas. Dusky skies, those crazy rock formations, the kind of light that makes everything look like a painting. They'd been taken by one of my best friends, a guy named Marcus. Earlier that year, Marcus had taken his own life. He'd struggled with depression for a long time, and no matter how much we tried to be there for him, he kept everyone at arm's length when it came to getting real help. Losing him, it knocked the wind out of me. Those photos were from the last road trip our group of friends took together before he died. So I'm standing there at the concierge desk, Eli next to me, both of us leaning over the monitor looking at those pictures. For a second, the hotel just kind of fades into the background, and it's like I'm back in that desert, laughing with him while he explains shutter speed for the 100th time. I glance at the time and realize, okay, we're about to get slammed with people checking out. So I close the browser tab, take this deep breath, and say out loud, kind of to myself, but kind of to the universe, "I really miss my friend Marcus Hale." And I swear to you, the Hale was barely off my lips when the concierge phone rang. Now, our phone system at the desk showed the names that were on the reservations. So I look down at the caller ID, and it says, Hale, Marcus. For a second, my brain just stops. I literally froze. Then my body caught up to what I was seeing. I jabbed my elbow into Eli's side, harder than I meant to, and just pointed at the phone display with my mouth hanging open. Eli leaned over, saw the name, and we both just stared at each other like, "Are you seeing this too?" Instinct finally kicked in. I snapped a quick photo of the phone screen with my own phone, then picked up the receiver and tried to sound like a normal, functioning adult. "Good morning. This is the concierge desk. This is Anna speaking. How can I help you, Mr. Hale?" On the other end, this totally normal, friendly guy goes, "Hey, yeah, sorry to bother you. The toilet in my room keeps flushing by itself. I just wanted to let you know before I check out." I'm still trying to process the name thing, so I'm stumbling through the usual apologies and, "We'll send someone up right away." While I'm mid-sentence, he pauses and says, "Oh, wait, never mind. It just stopped." "Huh. Okay, well, sorry about that. Have a good day." And he hangs up. I slowly put the phone back in the cradle and just look at Eli like, what just happened? That kind of look where you're half amused, half freaked out, and you don't have a box in your brain to put it in. Eli's eyes are huge. He just keeps saying, "No way, no way, no freaking way." The only one with that name in the entire database. I just sat there for a minute, staring at the screen, feeling this weird mix of comfort and goosebumps. It wasn't scary, exactly. More like somebody winking at you from behind a curtain you didn't know was there. The thing is, in life, Marcus was the last person who would have believed in anything paranormal. He was all about science, logic, numbers. He loved calculating probabilities just for fun. He'd roll his eyes at ghost stories and say, "You know the odds of that actually being something supernatural?" And that's what gets me, because if he were here and I told him this story, I know he'd immediately start trying to work out the math. What are the chances that, at the exact moment I say his full name out loud, a hotel guest with the same name, which we've never had before, just happens to call my desk? The odds, as he would put it, would be infinitesimally small. So maybe it was just one of those freak coincidences. Maybe that's all it was. But sitting there in that quiet lobby, with the phone still warm in my hand and his photos fresh in my mind, it felt like Marcus somehow found a tiny crack in the universe to send me a little wave. And honestly, I choose to believe that's exactly what he did. So, this one is my Uncle VJ and Aunt Lutha's story. They still bring it up every time the family gets together, you know? It'll be late, everyone will have eaten, kids are half asleep, and someone will say, "Are VJ chacha, wo purana ghar wala kissa sunaiye?" And he'll pretend he's tired, but he always tells it. This happened in 2001, just after they got married. At that time, they were really starting from scratch. One second-hand scooter that coughed more than it ran, 2 metal trunks with all their clothes and utensils, a small black and blue TV, and a few plastic chairs. That's it. My uncle had just got a government job in Lucknow, and they rented a small house just off the Lucknow-Kanpur road, near Banthra side, maybe 3 kilometers from his office. The house was on a side lane, a little isolated, with fields on one side and a mango orchard behind it. The landlord, Sharmaji, lived in the city. He was maybe in his late 50s back then. He told them the place used to belong to his uncle who had passed away suddenly. On paper, it was a simple single-story house, but my aunt says it had a certain feel to it. 2 small rooms, a narrow veranda, and a courtyard with a big old mango tree leaning slightly towards the house. In summer, she said, the smell of raw mangoes would drift into the kitchen, and the shade made the whole place feel softer, less lonely. She actually loved that tree in the beginning. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. They were newly married, busy figuring out life. Office, cooking, arguing about who forgot to buy vegetables, that sort of thing. They didn't think of the house as anything special, just cheap and close to the highway. Then one afternoon, when my uncle was at work, my aunt decided to properly clean out an old wooden cupboard that had come with the house. It was built into the wall of the back room, stiff hinges, smelling of camphor and dust. Tucked behind a pile of old newspapers, she found a small bell. It was made of copper, not shiny like the ones you see in temples, but dark, almost reddish-brown, as if it had been handled a lot and never cleaned. Around the rim there were tiny little figures carved. She thought they were just decorative at first, little dancing shapes. She liked how old it looked. So she washed it, wiped it nicely, tied a bit of red thread through the loop, and hung it near the kitchen entrance, just above where she had kept their small puja shelf. That's when things started becoming strange. At first, it was small. In the middle of the day, when she was alone, she'd hear it. Just a soft ting, ting, like someone barely touching it with a fingernail. She thought it was the wind, or maybe a rat brushing past. Old houses make weird sounds, right? So she ignored it. But then one night, this is the part she hates remembering. It was around 1:30 or 2 a.m. They were both asleep. The fan was on, highway sounds in the distance. Suddenly she woke up with this feeling that something was wrong. You know, that sudden jolt, like your mind is pulled to attention. And she heard it. Not soft anymore. The bell was ringing hard, fast. Ting, 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 like someone was shaking it angrily, non-stop, right there in the kitchen. It wasn't wind. It wasn't an accident. It sounded deliberate. She shook my uncle awake. Vijay, suno, suno. At first he grumbled, Kya hai sone do? But then he heard it too. They both sat up, just listening. The moment they stepped out of the bedroom and walked towards the kitchen, the sound stopped. They checked the bell. It was hanging perfectly still. After that night, my aunt says she stopped feeling alone in that house, even when nobody else was there. A few days later, she had her first sighting. It was late, maybe around midnight. My uncle had extra work, so she was alone. She went to bolt the front door and, out of habit, glanced towards the courtyard and the mango tree. There was a man standing under it. Tall, wearing a white kurta and dhoti. But the strange thing was, she couldn't see his face clearly. She said it was like the moonlight just refused to fall there. She could see the folds of his clothes, the bare feet, even the way his shoulder angled slightly towards the house. But where the face should have been, there was just shadow. He didn't move. He didn't walk closer. He just stood there, facing the house, as if he was watching. My aunt froze. You know when your mind is screaming, shut the door, but your hand won't move? She stood there for a full minute, heart pounding, then slammed the door, bolted it, and didn't open it again till my uncle came home. When she told him, he brushed it off. Arre, कोई मजदूर होगा या कोई रात को गुजरा होगा. थक गई हो तुम, ज़्यादा सोच रही हो. But the next week, he came home late himself. He was riding back on the scooter around 11:30 p.m. The street light in front of the house had gone off, typical, so the only light was from a distant pole and the half moon. As he parked, he felt that prickly sensation, like someone was watching him from behind. He turned towards the mango tree, and he swears he saw someone standing half-hidden. He told them that many years ago, around the time of the 1857 rebellion, he said, the area behind those orchards had been used as a cremation ground during the unrest. बहुत अशांति में जो लोग मारते हैं, उनकी जगह पहचान अलग हो जाती है, is how he put it. Then he asked about the previous owner. When my uncle mentioned that Sharmaji's uncle had lived there and was fond of rituals, the pundit gave a small, knowing nod. He told them he'd heard stories that the old man used to do strange midnight practices in the courtyard, lighting lamps, ringing a bell, chanting alone. The pundit did a havan right there in the courtyard that afternoon. My aunt remembers the smell of ghee and burning camphor, and how the house actually felt lighter while the fire was going. He chanted for a long time, sprinkled water in every room, then finally picked up the bell with a red cloth. Instead of taking it away, he walked to the base of the mango tree. He told my uncle to dig a small pit there. They placed the bell inside, wrapped in the cloth, along with some flowers and holy ash. Before covering it, he said, almost under his breath, "Jahan se bulaya gaya hai, wahi bandh diya jaye." Then he warned them, very clearly, "Ghar chhod dijiye jitni jaldi ho sake. Kuch cheezein sirf घास फुसल नहीं, जगह से जुड़ी होती है." That night, they didn't sleep properly. It was quiet for a while, and they started to think maybe the ritual had worked. Then, around 3 a.m., my aunt woke up again. No sound, no reason, just that same tight feeling in her chest. And then they heard it. Not the bell this time. It was the sound of digging. Outside, near the mango tree. A slow, rhythmic scrape. Tuck, scrape, tuck. Like someone dragging a spade in the soil and dropping it. My uncle got up, went to the window that opened towards the courtyard, and very slowly pulled the curtain aside. He told us that till the end of his life, he won't forget what he saw. There was no one there, but the soil under the mango tree, right where they had buried the bell, was moving, as if something underneath was pushing up, trying to come out. The earth rose a little, then fell, then rose again. There was no wind, no animal, nothing visible, just that horrible sight of the ground shifting on its own. And faintly, very faintly, he heard a bell ring once. Just once. He shut the window so fast he almost broke the latch. By morning, when they went out with the neighbor, the ground was flat. Completely smooth, as if no one had dug there in years. No loose mud, no marks, nothing. Within 3 days, they had packed their things and left that house. My uncle took a room in a crowded colony closer to the city, and even though the rent was higher and the place was noisy, they both said they slept better. A few years later, when the highway was expanded, that whole cluster of houses was demolished. The spot where their house stood is now somewhere near a petrol pump, if you go by their rough memory. But here's the thing. Truck drivers who regularly drive that stretch still tell stories. You know how highway tales travel, chai stalls, dabas, late-night gossip. Some say that on certain hot April nights, when mango season begins and the air smells a little sweet, they see a man in white walking along the edge of the road near the old orchard line. Tall, slow steps, head slightly lowered. They say sometimes they hear a faint ting, ting of a bell, even though there's no temple around, no village close by. But every year, when April comes and the first mangoes appear in the market, if he has to travel between Lucknow and Kanpur, he quietly adjusts his route. He'll take a longer way or an earlier bus, anything to avoid that particular stretch. And at home? If anyone ever takes out a brass or copper bell near him, during Diwali, during puja, even just to admire it, he smiles politely, makes some excuse like, "Chai dekh ke aata hoon," and leaves the room. He never looks at the bell, and he never, ever stays in a house that has a mango tree in the courtyard. All right, let me just tell you this straight, like we're sitting over a coffee together. So, this happened years ago, back in 2006. I remember the timing really clearly because it was during the World Cup, the one where Zidane did that infamous headbutt. That's basically how I timestamped the whole thing in my head. I was away with work, staying at this old country hotel just outside Leeds, Rosebridge Manor Hotel. Beautiful place from the outside, very postcard perfect, long driveway, big old trees, that sort of thing. I was there for a 3-day training course with my then employer. Nothing exciting, just corporate stuff. I checked in like normal. No alcohol involved, by the way. I'm not much of a drinker anyway, and I definitely hadn't had anything that night. They gave me room 214 on the second floor. The room itself was pretty standard. Bed, TV, tiny desk, slightly old-fashioned decor. The only thing I really noticed was how warm it was. It was midsummer, and there was no air conditioning. Just one of those useless little fans in the corner that seems to move hot air from one side of the room to the other. Anyway, night one. I get ready for bed, watch a bit of football, and eventually drift off. All totally normal. At some point in the night, I've no idea what time it was still dark. I became aware that I was awake, but my eyes were still closed. You know that odd in-between state where you know you're conscious, but you haven't moved yet? I was in that. And the first thing I noticed was the temperature. Remember how I said it had been too hot to sleep? Now suddenly it felt like someone had opened every window in the middle of winter. It was freezing. Not just a bit chilly, properly, unnaturally cold. I was under the duvet and still shivering. Then I got that feeling. You know when you just know someone else is in the room, even if you can't hear or see them yet? That heavy awareness, like the air's got weight to it. That's exactly how it felt. I was completely still, eyes closed, and my brain was just going, there is someone in here. On top of that, there was this strange smell. Not like damp or cleaning products, more like a metallic, sharp smell. Almost like blood, but I don't want to be dramatic. Just metal. Cold, stale, metallic air. And I know, these are all the cliches of a ghost story. Cold room, weird smell, sense of presence. If I was hearing this from someone else, I'd roll my eyes a bit too. But I'm just telling you what I actually experienced. So I'm lying there thinking, right, either there is someone standing over me, or I'm about to freak myself out for no reason. I decided to move. I rolled onto my back and opened my eyes. And I swear to you, even now, all these years later, I can still see it as clearly as if it was a photo. There, just a few feet above me, was the head and shoulders of a man. Semi-transparent. Not solid like you or me, but not mist either. Just there. Exactly like how they show ghosts on TV. You can see the features, but you can also see through them. He was facing me, looking straight into my eyes. His expression was not friendly. He wasn't screaming or anything, but there was this tight, angry look on his face, like he was absolutely furious that I was there. Dark hair, maybe in his 40s or 50s, old-fashioned shirt, collar slightly open. It all registered in a split second. And then he moved. He lunged towards me, still just head and shoulders, but he rushed forward, closing the distance between us. It wasn't slow or floaty. It was sudden and deliberate. Like he'd decided, you, out. And here is the part I still can't explain about myself. I literally rolled onto my side, squeezed my eyes shut, and thought, I'm not doing this. I'm going back to sleep. And that's what I did. As if that's a normal reaction when an angry ghost flies at your face. The next morning I woke up and the room was warm again. Sunlight coming in through the curtains, birds outside, all very ordinary. And I immediately started rationalizing the whole thing. You know the drill. You were half asleep. It was a dream. You imagined the cold, the smell, the man. You've seen too many horror movies. Get a grip. I basically talked myself out of it in my head. By the time I went down to reception, I'd mostly filed it under weird, but whatever. So I'm sitting in one of the armchairs in the reception area, waiting for the others from my course to come down. I remember scrolling through my phone, half awake, half people watching. Behind the desk were two receptionists chatting to a guest who was checking out. I wasn't paying attention until I heard one of them say, in this cheerful voice, "Oh, and did you sleep all right?" You weren't in 214, were you? That one's got our ghost. You know that feeling when every hair on your arm stands up at once? Yeah, that. I stayed completely still and kept my eyes on my phone, but my ears were doing all the work. The other receptionist laughed and started explaining. We've got this regular visitor, she said. An older man. Head and shoulders, sort of appears just above the bed, looks very cross. He used to own the house when it was a private manor, and he absolutely hates people in that room. If someone's in his bed, he sometimes rushes at them, puts the fear of God into people. I'm sitting there thinking, you're kidding me. She went on. 214 was apparently his favorite room when he lived here. Every so often, guests say the room goes freezing cold, they smell something strange, and then he appears over them and kind of lunges. We've had a few requests for room changes because of him. Everything she said matched what I'd experienced. The cold, the smell, the head and shoulders thing, the angry face, the rush towards me. And of all the rooms in that place, she named my room. At that point, the other guest wandered off towards the door, and I just couldn't sit there anymore. I got up, walked straight over to the desk and said, "Sorry, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I was in 214 last night." Both receptionists looked at me. One of them raised her eyebrows, sort of half amused, half expecting what was coming. So I told them. I told them about waking up freezing cold, the metallic smell, opening my eyes and seeing this angry man's head and shoulders above me, and him rushing forward. And I admitted the stupid part, that I just rolled over and went back to sleep. They didn't look surprised, not even a little bit. One of them nodded and said, "Yeah, that's him. Same as everyone else describes. You're not the first, and you probably won't be the last." I asked if I could change rooms for the rest of my stay, and they were completely fine about it. Almost too casual, actually, like this was just part of the job. They moved me to a different wing of the hotel, and the rest of my nights there were totally uneventful. No ghosts, no cold, just normal, creaky old building stuff. Of course, after I got home, curiosity got the better of me. I looked the place up and found out that it's considered a pretty haunted hotel. There's an actual backstory about the original owner, various sightings, and they even do ghost tours and ghost hunting evenings there now. But those receptionists had no idea who I was. They didn't know what I'd seen, which room I'd been in, or even that I was listening. And yet, they described in detail exactly what I'd experienced, right down to the way he appears and the room he favors. That's the bit I can't rationalize away. And maybe this is another weird part of it. Growing up, my Aunt Laura always swore she'd seen a couple of ghosts in her life. I used to listen, half fascinated, half skeptical, thinking, yeah, okay, sure, maybe. It did make me wonder, though, whether only some people can see these things, or whether it's just a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or the right place, depending on how you look at it. All I know is that in the summer of 2006, in room 214 of a hotel outside Leeds, I saw something I cannot explain away. And as much as the rational part of my brain still tries to poke holes in it, there's another part of me that just quietly says, no, that was real. So, let me tell you about something that happened a few summers ago. It was late July in eastern Kentucky, the kind of summer where the air feels heavy even after the sun goes down. My family and I were going to visit my grandpa in the nursing home after his stroke. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what he would look like, or if he'd even remember me. The only reason I worked up the courage to go in was because my cousin Leo came along. Somehow having him there made me feel braver, like we were in it together. When we walked through the automatic doors, The first thing I felt was this cold blast of air conditioning on my sweaty skin. The place smelled like disinfectant and something I still can't quite describe. In the waiting area, there were a bunch of older folks sitting in wheelchairs or on couches, some watching TV, some just staring. We visited Grandpa for a while, talked a bit, held his hand, listened to him repeat the same stories he always told us, just now. When it was time to go, my grandma and my aunt were at the front desk signing us out. That's when my sister, my cousin Leo, and I decided to wander a little. You know how kids are when they're bored. We were making dumb jokes, trying not to laugh too loud, just kind of trailing down the hall without really thinking about where we were going. And then we saw her. At the very end of the hallway, an elderly woman sat in a wheelchair just outside her room. The hallway lights made everything feel a little yellow and too quiet. We slowed down, kind of staring before we realized we probably looked rude. She noticed us. Her face lit up, and she lifted her hand and started waving us over, like she'd been waiting for someone all day. There was something off about her, something distant in her eyes, like she was only halfway there. But we still walked toward her. It wasn't even that far, but it felt like a long walk. When we got close enough, she smiled and said, in this soft, shaky voice, "You children are so young and lovely. You need to live your lives with God in your hearts." We all kind of froze. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled awkwardly. Then she went quiet. Her eyes suddenly widened, like she was seeing something right behind us, something we couldn't see. "Wait," she whispered. "Are you angels?" We just stood there. I wasn't scared exactly, just confused and kind of stuck. My sister Maya pressed her lips together, trying not to laugh out of sheer nervousness. But Leo? His face went pale. He looked like he wanted to sprint straight back to the front desk. The woman kept looking at us like we were glowing or something. Then she said, "My husband and my son told me I'll be going to heaven soon." Leo's voice shook when he finally said, That's kind of scary." She reached out a little, her hand trembling. "Don't be scared, sweetie," she told him. "I'm going to be with God tomorrow." And the way she said tomorrow, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't attention-seeking. It sounded like she was talking about a dentist appointment or a lunch date. Just a simple fact. The silence after that felt heavy and strange. None of us knew what to say. I could feel the hairs on my arms standing up. Finally, I blurted out, "Okay, sorry ma'am, we have to go now. Our family's waiting." She nodded and smiled again, still studying our faces. "Will you children be coming back tomorrow?" she asked. I didn't want to be rude, so I just said, "Yes, ma'am," even though we had no plans to come back the next day. Her name, the receptionist said, was Mabel. The woman behind the desk looked tired, but kind. When we mentioned what Mabel had said about going to heaven tomorrow, the receptionist sighed a little and gave us a small smile. "Mabel has advanced dementia," she explained. "Sometimes she says things that don't make much sense. She just speaks whatever comes into her mind." We all nodded, and I remember feeling this weird mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that maybe it wasn't anything spooky, and disappointment because, for a second, it had felt like something bigger than us was happening. And then we didn't think about it much. At least, not until the next visit. About a week later, we went back to see Grandpa. Same nursing home, same cold blast of air when the doors opened, same smell I still can't put a name to. We walked down toward his room, and there she was again, Mabel. She was sitting in her wheelchair in that exact same spot outside her room, at the end of the hallway. Same floral blanket over her legs, same soft cardigan, same faraway look in her eyes. But this time, something about her felt emptier. Her eyes weren't really focusing on anything, just staring ahead, like she was watching something that none of us could see. Still, when we walked by, she slowly turned her head just enough to look at us and lifted her hand in this tiny wave. We waved back. None of us said anything. We went in and visited Grandpa again, stayed for a while, talked, laughed a little more this time. He seemed stronger. That helped. When we were done, we decided, like before, to wander around a bit. And of course, we ended up heading toward the same hallway. We turned the corner, looked down the hall, and Mabel wasn't there. Her wheelchair, though, that was still there. Same spot, same angle, just empty. The hallway felt different without her in it. Quieter, heavier. The three of us, Maya, Leo, and I, looked at each other, and I could tell we were all thinking the same thing, even if none of us wanted to say it out loud. Curiosity won. We walked slowly toward her room. Every step felt louder than it should have. The air felt thicker, like we were walking into somewhere we weren't supposed to be. When we reached her door, it was open just a little. We peeked inside. It was completely empty. The bed was made perfectly, like no one had slept in it. The nightstand was bare. No photos, no cards, no flowers, nothing. The walls looked freshly wiped, like they'd just finished cleaning everything out. It didn't look like someone's room anymore. It looked like a room waiting for the next person. Maybe they moved her, Maya whispered. Yeah, I said, but my voice didn't sound very sure, not even to me. At the end of our visit, we went back up to the front desk. I could feel my heart beating a little faster, but I forced myself to ask. What happened to Mabel? The lady who used to be at the end of that hallway. Her room is empty now. Did she get moved? Because she waved at us today. The receptionist's face changed immediately. Her eyebrows went up, and all the color seemed to drain right out of her cheeks. That shouldn't be possible, she said slowly. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She glanced at the other nurse behind the counter, then back at us. Mabel passed away last week, she said. She died in her sleep. For a second, I thought maybe she was joking or testing us, but her face stayed serious. She even turned to the computer, clicked through a couple of screens, and nodded, almost to herself. Yeah, she confirmed quietly. She died the day after your last visit. The day after she told us she was going to be with God, tomorrow. On the drive home, no one talked much. The radio played softly, but it just felt like background noise. I kept replaying it all in my head. The first time she spoke to us, the way her eyes had widened, the way she asked if we were angels, the way we saw her the second time, empty but somehow still there. It's been 3 years now, and I still bring it up with Leo sometimes. We'll be hanging out, and one of us will say, "Do you remember that lady at the nursing home?" And the other one will just go quiet for a second before saying, "Yeah, I think about her more than I'd like to admit. I don't know what really happened. Did we actually see her that second time? Did all three of us somehow imagine the same thing? The same blanket? The same slow wave? The same empty eyes? Or was she really there, one last time, saying goodbye from that spot at the end of the hall? I still don't have an answer. All I know is this. Every time I walk into a hospital or a nursing home now, I think of Mabel. And part of me still wonders if, just for a moment, we saw something we weren't supposed to see. Something meant for the space between here and whatever comes next. So, let me tell you about the night I swore I'd never work third shift alone again. A few years back, I was working as a loss prevention agent for this giant clothing company's main warehouse and office campus. Think endless racks of clothes, humming conveyor belts, and that weird mix of perfume, cardboard, and coffee that always hangs in the air. Normally, I worked first and second shift, daytime into late evening. Every once in a while, though, I'd cover the overnight. Third shift, the nothing ever happens shift, supposedly. Two of my first shift co-workers, Jess and Marco, were hardcore ghost hunters. Like, they had all the gear, did weekend investigations, the whole thing. One morning, as we were handing things off between shifts, they told me, very casually, "Oh yeah, this building? Totally haunted. Third shift gets all the fun." I kind of laughed it off, but I do believe in ghosts. I just had never had one give me that stalkery, being watched vibe. You know what I mean? So I shrugged it off with a, "Sure, okay," and went on with my day. Fast forward a few months. We're short-staffed and I volunteer to cover third shift alone. No big deal, I thought. Extra hours, extra pay. The building felt like a completely different place at night. Quiet, hollow. Just the faint hum of the HVAC and the buzz of the fluorescent lights. The only other people on site were 3 maintenance guys way across the campus, over by the loading docks. If I'd walked to them, it would have taken me maybe 10 minutes. So effectively, I was alone. It's around 3 a.m., that weird time when your body can't decide if it's tired or wired, when I hear footsteps. Not just random creaks, but actual footsteps. Heel-toe, heel-toe. Steady. Coming from the hallway that leads to the IT offices. I look up at the monitor wall, expecting to see someone. Nothing. Every camera feed is still. No motion, no figures, just an empty hallway. So I grab my radio and call maintenance. "Hey, you guys roaming around near IT?" They come back like, "Nope, we're on break. We're in the back room eating, nowhere near you." Okay, so that's weird. I'm trying to be logical, right? Maybe it's the building settling, maybe one of the cameras glitched. But those footsteps had that very human rhythm, and they had stopped the second I really paid attention. So I decide to check it out myself. I take my flashlight, because even though the lights are on, a flashlight just makes you feel braver, and walk down the hallway to IT. The whole place is dead quiet. The carpeted hallway muffles my own steps, which somehow makes it feel creepier. I peek into the IT offices, check doors, look under desks. Nothing. Everything is locked up and secure. I radio maintenance again and joke, "Okay, false alarm. Pretty sure it's just my nerves trying to entertain themselves." We laugh about it. I go back to the security office, and I try to shake it off. About an hour later, so now it's around 4 a.m., the IT office alarm goes off. It's not just a motion ping. It's a full access alarm, like someone used their key card to go in. On my panel, it shows the door opening and closing. But when I look at the computer screen where a name and photo should pop up for the key card holder, it's blank. No name, no badge number, no photo. Just access granted with a timestamp and then door open. I flip through all the camera feeds again, specifically the ones covering that hallway and the IT door. Still nothing. Door looks closed. No one walking, no one standing, no weird shadows. Just nothing. Meanwhile, the alarm won't stop. It keeps chiming, showing the IT door opening and closing, like someone is going in and out over and over. But on the cameras, still nothing. We start walking together toward the IT hallway. As we get closer, we all hear it. Footsteps again. This time, all 4 of us hear them. They're just ahead of us, like someone's walking slowly away from us, turning a corner we can't see yet. The hairs on my arms stand straight up. Nobody's talking now. Luis shifts that wrench in his hand like he actually expects to use it. We turn into the IT hallway. The alarm is still going. The panel on the wall is lit up, showing the door is accessed. The IT office door itself is closed. We try the handle. Locked. One of the guys swipes his master key card and pushes the door open. We're half expecting some employee to jump and say, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to clock out." Or a raccoon or something. Nothing. It's absolutely empty. Chairs pushed in, computers sleeping, no windows open, nothing knocked over. We do a quick sweep. Behind the door, under the desks, server room, storage closet. Nobody. We come back out into the hallway, looking at each other like, okay, but we all heard that, right? And then, right as we're standing there, the air changes. The temperature drops in this really sharp, specific way, like someone opened a walk-in freezer right in front of us. A cold breeze rushes down the hallway, but none of the vents are blowing, and the doors at each end are closed. The overhead lights flicker, not enough to go out, just enough to make every instinct scream, "Nope." All four of us feel it wash over us at the same time. One of the guys just whispers, "Nope, nope, nope," under his breath. And then we all react in the most professional, well-trained security and maintenance manner possible. We run. These guys, who are absolutely not the running type, take off down the hallway like Olympic sprinters. I'm right behind them. We burst back into the main lobby and just stop. No one says anything. We sit there in this weird, stunned silence for a good hour. Just four grown adults in work uniforms, staring at each other like, if you say it out loud, it becomes real, so don't say it. The alarm eventually stops on its own. The panel clears. Nothing else happens the rest of the shift. Honestly, there are chunks of that night I don't fully remember. I think my brain just filed it under, we're not dealing with this. When my manager came in around 6:30 a.m., coffee in hand, looking all refreshed, he asks, "So, how was the night?" I just stared at him for a second and said, "I'm not doing third shift alone again. If you need overnight coverage, I want another body in the building. Human, preferably alive." He kind of laughed until he saw my face and realized I wasn't joking. And then I had to write up the report. Try explaining, in official incident report language, why your alarms went off repeatedly, your access logs show an invisible keycard, and 4 employees all heard footsteps and felt a cold draft in a sealed hallway, with 0 video proof. Cause of alarm, unknown. Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, that's the story of why I still side-eye dark hallways and why, if someone asks me to cover third shift alone, my immediate answer is absolutely not. Good night, or good morning, depending on where you are. Lena, Bruno, and Pixel the cat. Alright, so let me tell you about the only ghost story I've ever had in my life. I was about 20 on a religious mission abroad in Venezuela. Not gonna lie, I wasn't, and still am not, a super spiritual or churchy person. I mostly went because of family expectations and that whole cultural pressure thing. But this one experience has stuck with me in a way I still can't quite shake. We were in this humid little coastal town called Puerto Carupano, right on the edge of the Caribbean. There were 4 of us guys, all around the same age, living in this cramped apartment above a tiny corner grocery shop that baked bread in the mornings. The smell of bread at 5 a.m. was actually the best part of that place. Everything else was questionable. So picture the apartment. You walk in and there's this small living/dining space that just kind of melts into the kitchen. No real separation, just old tile and mismatched furniture. Off to the right was a short hallway. First door on the left, the only bathroom, which was kind of always damp and smelled vaguely like bleach and humidity. Second door on the left, a tiny bedroom with 2 single mattresses and 1 narrow window up near the ceiling, like it was embarrassed to let in real light. There was no fan that worked, no AC, and it was stupidly hot at night. Like sweat just existing hot. So instead of using both rooms, all 4 of us ended up sleeping in the bigger bedroom across the hall from that little one. 2 actual beds, one right next to the door, one along the wall, and then me and 1 other missionary on mattresses on the tan tile floor. That floor was cold for about 4 minutes every night. Then it turned into a griddle. My assigned companion at the time was this quiet, thoughtful guy I'll call Elder Ruiz. The other two were Javier, a local Venezuelan missionary, really funny, always joking, and Collins, another American like me. One morning, me and Ruiz were out walking, doing our usual routine, knocking on doors, trying not to melt in the sun. At some point, he slows down and goes, kind of shyly, "Hey, can I tell you something?" His tone was weird enough that I'm like, "Yeah, of course. What's up?" He hesitates, stares at the ground for a second, and then says, "Last night, I woke up and I saw someone lying next to you, like a man, but he didn't look alive, more like a spirit." And I just kind of stop on the sidewalk, staring at him. He keeps going. "He was just lying there beside your mattress, like he was resting." Now the weird part is, I had a dream that night. So I tell Ruiz, "Okay, that's strange, because I dreamed some guy came to our door." In my dream, I heard this soft tapping on the bars of our apartment door. You know those metal security grates that slide and clang? It was that. I got up, walked over, and there's this man standing there. He looked worn out, like he'd been traveling for days. He had this old, beat-up straw hat, kind of like those wide-brimmed hats farmers wear, and a big backpack hanging off one shoulder. He says, really politely, "I'm so tired. Can I rest here for a while?" And in the dream, I feel, I don't know, just calm, not scared. I open the door, let him in, and tell him he can stay. So I'm telling Ruiz all this, and he's just staring at me, eyes getting wider. Then he asks, "Do you think we should tell the others?" And I just shrug it off. I'm like, "Nah, it's probably just coincidence. You had a weird half-awake thing. I had a weird dream. No need to freak anybody out." I didn't really believe in ghost stories, and I definitely wasn't looking to start one in a stuffy apartment where we all had to sleep anyway. Fast forward to that night. We'd finished our day, done our little planning session, said a quick prayer, all the usual routine stuff. Eventually, we all start winding down. 3 of us had already gone to the bedroom. Collins was still in the bathroom at the end of the hallway, brushing his teeth or shaving or something. I dragged my mattress into its usual spot on the floor, right between the 2 beds. The overhead light was off, just that soft glow from the hallway leaking under the door. I lay down, listening to the old building creak, the hum of distant traffic, the occasional dog barking outside. And then, I start hearing voices. At first, it's faint, like when you think you hear a radio playing in another room. Just a couple of murmurs, nothing clear. I'm lying there thinking, okay, maybe someone left a TV on downstairs in the shop. But the voices start multiplying. It's not just 1 or 2 anymore. It sounds like a group. Then more. It's like being dropped right in the middle of a busy market or a crowd. Layers and layers of people talking over each other. Different tones, different pitches, but no distinct words I can pick out. I roll onto my side. The sound doesn't change. I squeeze my eyes shut, then open them again. Still there. It just keeps building, getting louder, pressing in from every direction. I remember thinking, am I losing it? Is this what going crazy feels like? My heart was pounding. I wanted to call out, but it felt like if I spoke, something would notice me, I guess. I know that sounds weird, but that's how it felt. Like I needed to stay very, very quiet. I was right on the edge of yelling for help when the door suddenly bursts open. Collins comes flying into the room, slams the door behind him, and just stands there, eyes wide. And in Spanish, his accent was terrible, but he was trying. He blurts out, "Hay algo ahí afuera." There's something out there. Something is in our apartment. As soon as he said that, the voices just cut. Like somebody hit a switch. One second, it's a crowd in my head. The next, it's dead silent. All I can hear is our own breathing. Nobody moved. Nobody got up to check. The four of us just stared at each other in the dark. Finally, I told them what Ruiz had shared with me earlier, and then I told them about my dream. You could feel the energy in the room shift. Even the air felt different, heavy, like before a storm. One of the guys, I think it was Javier, offered to say a prayer. So he did, right there in the dark, all of us sitting up on our beds and mattresses, trying not to freak out. It wasn't dramatic or anything, just a simple, shaky little prayer asking for protection and peace. After that, nothing else weird happened that night. We eventually fell asleep. But that wasn't the end of it. This went on for 3 nights in a row. Different little things. Me waking up from these strangely vivid dreams of our visitor. Ruiz feeling like someone was in the room again. That heaviness in the air. But the 3rd night is the one that really sealed it for me. On the morning after that 3rd night, we were all kind of sitting around, eating cheap bread and powdered milk for breakfast. And the one guy who hadn't really experienced anything directly, Collins, kind of casually goes, "So, I saw him leave last night." We all look up like, "Saw who leave?" He looks at me and says, "The man who was sleeping where you were, on the floor." My stomach dropped. We pressed him for details. I remember asking, "What exactly did you see?" The important part? My mattress was right next to the door. If anyone had gotten up and left, they would have had to step over or around me. None of us had left the room that night. We'd all been half spooked and basically glued to our spots. So I finally tell them about the dream I had that same night. In this dream, I'm lying on my mattress and I feel someone standing over me. I look up and it's the same traveler, same worn out clothes, same big backpack. He's adjusting his straw hat, kind of fiddling with the brim. He looks down at me with this tired little smile and says, "Thank you for letting me rest here. I needed it. But I have to keep moving." And then, in the dream, I watch him turn, walk to the door, open it, step out, and close it gently behind him. It was exactly what Collins described seeing from his bed, except Collins was awake, and he hadn't heard my dream yet. He didn't even know about the first one, with the knocking and the request to stay. None of us had a good explanation. We still don't. I've stopped going to church regularly. It's been over 5 years now. I don't really spend time worrying about ghosts or angels or any of that. Life is busy, and honestly, day-to-day stuff feels more real to me than spiritual debates. But this quiet, exhausted traveler in the straw hat, who showed up for 3 nights in a suffocating little apartment above a grocery shop on the Venezuelan coast. This story still sits with me. I don't know what he was. I don't know if it was just some strange shared dream, or a trick of our tired minds, or something actually beyond us. All I know is, we let him in, he rested, and then he thanked us and moved on. And for whatever reason, all these years later, I still think about him. You know, I've chimed in on stories like this plenty of times, but I don't think I've ever just sat down and really told one of mine from start to finish. So, hi, I'm Emma, and I've always been a little sensitive to things most people would call weird. My mom, her name's Lila, was very psychic. On her side of the family, it's kind of a running joke that the veil is thin, but there's some truth to it. I grew up with her casually saying things like, "Oh, your grandfather stopped by last night," and she meant the one who had already passed. So for me, this stuff has always been normal-ish. Anyway, here's what happened recently. I work in elder care communities. I don't have a fixed office. I'm like a nomad with a laptop. I'm in and out of different buildings all day, just plopping down wherever there's an empty desk or a quiet corner to do my paperwork. I've only been in my current position for about, 2 months now? Still in that phase where you're figuring out where the good coffee is and which printer hates you the least. One of my buildings used to be a hospital. It was built in the early 1960s, and it's small, technically one main floor with a tiny mezzanine, but everything our residents use is on the ground level. They've renovated it a lot, so it's bright and cozy now, but it still has that mid-century modern feel if you pay attention. The lines of the hallways, the old brick, the way the windows sit. Our administrator there, her name is Carla, is kind of obsessed with the building's history. She's found old hospital odds and ends in the basement, metal signs, a cracked wooden wheelchair, an old nurses station plaque, even a framed photo from the hospital's dedication. She's put some of it on display in the lobby. There's this really sweet detail too. One of our residents, Mr. Harris, actually worked in that hospital back in the day as a young doctor. Sometimes he'll shuffle past the display cases, tap the glass and say, "That's not where that sign used to be," and just chuckle to himself. It gives the place this vintage, lived-in vibe. Like time didn't completely move out, it just changed clothes. Now, in this building, my office is the old chapel. It's a small room tucked just off the main lobby. Even after all these years, it's gorgeous. Stained glass windows that catch the afternoon light, a simple wooden cross still hanging on the wall, and these built-in pews that creak when you sit down. There's a little table in the back where I set up my laptop. It's quiet, but you can still hear life happening in the lobby outside. Residents chatting, staff walking by, the TV murmuring away. The TV is almost always on in the lobby. Usually it's game shows or old movies, comfort noise for the residents. So when I'm in the chapel, there's this mix of silence and distant sound. It's actually kind of peaceful. Last week, I was in there catching up on paperwork. Just another day, just me, my laptop, and my 4th cup of coffee. I'm typing away, half listening to the muffled TV, when I hear it. Someone crying. At first it's faint, like someone trying not to be heard. A soft, strained kind of crying. I freeze for a second because it doesn't sound like the TV. It sounds close, human, real. I almost stand up right away to poke my head out the door, but just then I hear footsteps in the hallway. Carla, the administrator, and one of the nurses, Andre, walk past. I can recognize their voices now pretty easily. They're laughing about something, some inside joke, and they don't sound rushed or concerned at all. The crying fades. I tell myself, must be the TV. It has to be. You know how, when you're half focused, your brain can mash sounds together and trick you? About 10 minutes later, I get up to use the bathroom and walk out into the lobby. There's just one resident sitting there, watching an old black and white western. The scene on TV is some dusty street, a showdown, dramatic music, but no one is crying. No soap opera, no drama, just cowboys and bad dialogue. I stand there for a second, pretending to check my phone, just listening. Nothing but gunshots and hoofbeats and that low TV hum. So I shrug it off. I'm new, I'm tired, long day, weird acoustics, whatever. I walk back to the chapel, finish my work, go home, and don't think too much more about it. Then yesterday happened. Same building, same chapel, same little table by the stained glass. This time it's late afternoon, that kind of soft golden light slanting through the windows. The lobby TV is on again, and I can hear some kind of talk show or game show droning in the background. Normal. I'm typing, minding my own business, and I hear it again, crying. But this time, I pay attention. I stop typing. I literally take my hands off the keyboard and just listen. The crying is clearer now. It's not a sudden wail or a loud sobbing. It's this low, steady, heartbroken sound. Like someone who's been crying for a while and is exhausted, but can't stop. There's this hitch in the breath every now and then, like that little gasp you get when you try to calm down and you can't. The hair on my arms goes straight up. I listen for the TV to sync with it, like maybe there's some dramatic scene on. But the sounds don't line up. The TV is doing its own thing. Audience laughter, some host talking, little bursts of music. The crying is separate. It's not louder or clearer than the TV. It just has its own rhythm, its own presence. At one point, I actually lean forward, like that's going to help my ears figure it out. I glance at the chapel door. It's open, just a few inches. I can see a slice of the lobby floor and a plant in the corner, but no feet, no wheelchairs, no one standing just outside. The crying sounds like it's in the room with me, but also not tied to any particular spot. Not in front of me, not behind me, just there. All around but nowhere. My mind starts racing. Is someone in the hallway? Is it coming from another room? Is there a resident upset in a nearby apartment? I reach for some kind of logical explanation, because that's what you do. You try to keep things normal. I stand up and step out into the lobby. There are two residents chatting softly near the TV. Carla is at the far end of the hall, talking to a family member. The show on the TV is some light daytime program. People are guessing prices and clapping. No crying, no sad scene, no one looking distressed. And just like that, the crying stops. I stand there, feeling a little silly and a little shaken. I go back into the chapel. It's quiet now, just the TV and the faint hum of the building. And this is the moment where something in me just quietly goes, oh, okay. This isn't the TV. This isn't a stressed out resident. This is something else. I sit back down at the table, look up at the stained glass, and I get this very strong impression, almost like a memory that isn't mine, of this room when it was still a hospital chapel. People coming in here to pray for loved ones, to sit alone, to cry, to beg, to grieve. I don't see anything, but I feel a heaviness, like the air is full of old emotions. Nothing evil or threatening, just deeply sad, like some echo of all the people who came in here with breaking hearts never fully cleared out. And it hits me. Not a ghost trying to talk to me, not something aware that I'm there, just leftover emotion, a loop, an imprint of someone's worst day that's somehow stuck to this little chapel, replaying when the conditions are just right. That realization is weirdly comforting. It's still unsettling. I mean, hearing disembodied crying is never going to feel normal, but it doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like walking into a room where someone has just been crying, and you know it even though they've already left. I don't say anything to Carla or Andre. Not yet, anyway. I just quietly pack up my laptop when I'm done, thank the chapel under my breath. Yes, I know that sounds strange, and head home. But I can't stop thinking about it. Given my family, given my mom, given the kind of things I grew up around, part of me isn't surprised. Sensitive people pick up on things like that. And this building has seen a lot of life and death. A lot of hope and a lot of heartbreak. So yeah, as of now, I'm pretty convinced that what I've experienced in that little chapel isn't my imagination, and it isn't a TV glitch. I think I've been sitting with the echoes of an old hospital, and every now and then, the walls remember. So let me just tell you this straight, like we're sitting together on the couch, okay? To this day, I still don't know what actually happened that night. I can make guesses, I can try to explain it away, but deep down, I know it was real. And I know I'll never forget her. It was late summer, one of those in-between evenings where it's not really warm anymore, but it isn't cold yet either. I remember looking at the clock in the kitchen. It was just after 10. Outside, it was already properly dark, that heavy kind of darkness you only get in quieter neighborhoods. My parents were away at a small lakeside campsite for the weekend. My older brother, Daniel, was on the late shift at work. My grandfather had already passed away a few years earlier, so it was just my grandmother and me at home. She was around 72 back then. We lived in this older 2-story house, the kind where the floorboards remember every step you've ever taken, and the wind whistles through the gaps in the window frames when it's quiet. Even as a kid, the house made me uneasy when I was alone. Not because of one specific incident, more this constant feeling that something was sitting just past the edge of the light, waiting. You know that feeling when you walk down a hallway at night and you're suddenly sure someone's watching you, even though you know no one's there? Yeah, that was pretty much my baseline. At some point, I'd gotten into the habit of always locking my bedroom door when I went in for the night. It was my little ritual: close door, turn the key, jiggle the handle to check. It gave me this tiny sense of control, a bit of fake safety maybe, but it helped. That evening started completely normal. I went to the bathroom, then to the kitchen to grab something to eat. I threw a frozen lasagna into the oven, nothing fancy, and poured myself a glass of iced tea. I gathered everything up so I wouldn't have to leave my room later. My plan was simple: stay in my room, listen to some music, play a bit of Xbox, maybe watch a movie before falling asleep. Before heading upstairs, I popped my head into the living room to see my grandma. Her name was Marta. Like almost every evening, she was sunk into her old green armchair, watching some quiz show with the volume just a little too loud. She looked over at me and smiled that soft, tired smile she always had at night. I said, "Good night, Oma. I'll be in my room if you need me." She asked, "Are you having breakfast with me tomorrow?" And I said, "Depends how late I stay up," kind of laughing. Totally normal moment. Nothing creepy, nothing strange. Then I went upstairs. I went into my room, closed the door, locked it like always, and did my little handle check. Then I sat down on the small couch by the wall, ate my lasagna straight out of the little baking dish, and turned on my Xbox. I remember the startup sound so clearly for some reason. While I was playing, I was on a voice call with my best friend at the time. Let's call her Leah. We had our usual nonsense conversation going, talking about school, people we had crushes on, teachers we hated. Just everyday teenage stuff. Maybe 20 minutes in, everything cut out. The game froze and went offline, the party chat disconnected, and the little Wi-Fi symbol on my phone turned into that empty outline. Just gone. Our internet almost never went down. The router was in this tiny storage room at the end of the hallway, pretty much right next to my bedroom. So I grabbed my phone and tried to reconnect. Nothing. Leah messaged me. "Hello? Did your internet die?" I called her back over mobile data and said, "Wait a second, our Wi-Fi just died on me. I'll fix it real quick." I went into the little room, unplugged the router, counted maybe 10 seconds in my head, then plugged it back in. The lights blinked, then started flickering in the usual pattern. Everything looked normal. For a second, I even rolled my eyes at myself for being so jumpy in that creaky old house. I went back to my room, closed the door again, locked it, and sat down. I put my headset on, grabbed the controller, and told Leah, "Okay, all good, I'm back." And then came the moment I will never forget. I was in the middle of a sentence, just talking normally, when I heard it. Click. The doorknob. At first, it was so quiet I thought I'd imagined it. Just this tiny metallic sound behind me. I froze for a second and listened. Leah was still talking about something, but her voice kind of faded into the background. Then I heard it again. Click. And this time, it wasn't just the sound. The handle moved. Slowly at first, just enough that you could hear the mechanism inside the door. My whole body tensed up. I turned my head toward the door, And right then, whoever or whatever was on the other side suddenly pushed the handle down with full force. It slammed down so hard and so fast that the metal squeaked. Not once, over and over. Bang, squeak. Bang, squeak. Bang, squeak. It was so violent that the door shook in the frame. I could see the handle moving almost all the way down each time, like someone was really trying to force the door open. For a second, I couldn't breathe. It felt like all the air got sucked out of the room. My chest was tight. My palms instantly started sweating. It was pure adrenaline. On my headset, I heard Leah say, "Hello? What was that? Are you okay?" Her voice sounded weirdly far away. I didn't answer. I just stared at the door, absolutely frozen. It's funny, people always think they'd shout or run or do something brave. Honestly, I couldn't move. I was just standing there, watching the handle slam down again and again, like it might break off. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. No slow fading out, no footsteps, no creaking floorboards. Just this absolute, heavy silence. The kind where you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears. I don't know how long I stood there with my eyes glued to that handle. It could have been 10 seconds, could have been a full minute. Time felt really weird. Finally, I forced myself to move. I took my headset off, set the controller down quietly, and walked to the door. Every step felt loud, even though I was trying to be silent. I put my hand on the cold metal of the handle, turned the key very slowly, and unlocked the door. Then I opened it. The hallway was empty. The only light came from my room, spilling out over the old wallpaper. Every shadow looked suspicious. I checked both directions, listened for any sound, any movement. Nothing. No open windows, no doors closing, no footsteps on the stairs, just the faint sound of the TV downstairs. My heart was still pounding, but curiosity, or maybe stubbornness, pushed me to go check. So I went down to the living room where my grandma was. There she was, still in her green armchair, blanket over her knees, eyes on the TV, calm as ever. "Grandma?" I asked, trying not to sound as shaky as I felt. She muted the TV and looked at me. "Yes, dear?" "Were you just upstairs?" I asked. "At my room? Did you try my door?" She frowned like the question didn't make sense. "No, why would I? I've been sitting here the whole time." "But I know what I saw. Door handles don't slam themselves down like that. Not that hard. Not that fast. And I wasn't just hearing it. I was looking right at it. We checked the doors and windows. Everything was locked from the inside. Nothing was broken. Nothing was missing. There was no sign that anyone had been in the house. I went back up to my room eventually, but I didn't even think about sleeping. I left the lights on. I locked the door again and kept checking the handle, like I was making sure it was still there, still solid. Every little creak of the house sounded amplified, like someone whispering just out of earshot. The faint hum of the router down the hall, the fridge motor starting up downstairs, the wind sliding along the outside wall. Everything felt suddenly wrong. At some point in the very early morning, I did finally fall asleep, still in my clothes, with the controller next to me and the lights burning. And just before I drifted off, this thought slid into my mind, quiet, simple, and absolutely terrifying. If I hadn't locked the door that night, what or who would have walked in? Okay. I'm 24 now, but this happened when I was 23. At the time, I was working at this really fancy spa inside an old hotel downtown. The building itself was like 90 years old or something. One of those places with marble floors in the lobby, huge chandeliers, and a weird smell that's not quite old, but not quite new either. They'd renovated most of it, so on the surface it looked modern and pretty, but you could still feel how old it was. You know? The spa was up on the 9th floor of this 11-story hotel, and everybody who worked there had at least one ghost story. It was almost like a workplace requirement. Before I started there, I'd sometimes see what people call shadow figures. Not super clear, never like a full person, more like movement in the corner of my eye, or that heavy feeling that someone just walked past you even when you're alone. And that kind of thing followed me into the hotel too. When I was still pretty new at the job, I was slow with my services, so I'd always end up as the last one there. Lights off in the hallway, just that humming, air-conditioned silence, and me in my little uniform, trying to finish cleaning so I could go home. By then, the only ghost story I really knew about the hotel was this one about a woman. The way it was told to me, she and her fiancé were supposed to get married, and they were staying there for a few days. Something happened, some kind of car accident, I think, and he died right before the wedding. She was staying on maybe the 7th or 8th floor, and she just never checked out. The story goes that she passed away in her room from grief. So that's kind of the backdrop to all of this. Now, there's this little dispensary room in the spa where we kept all our tools, products, fresh towels. Basically the back of house supply closet, but a bit bigger and brighter. I was always uncomfortable in there. Not because of how it looked, but because of how it felt. Whenever I stood at the sink in that room, washing my tools at the end of the night, it honestly felt like people were walking in and out behind me. Like coworkers in a rush, passing through to grab something. Only, there was no one there. But the presence of them felt exactly the same as when a real person walked by. Same weight, same sense of movement. So, one night, I'm there alone again. Everyone has already left. The spa is quiet in that too quiet way older buildings get at night. I'm standing at the sink, rinsing things off, trying to be quick because the longer I stayed, the more uneasy I felt. And then I suddenly noticed something. Out of nowhere, I feel this little something at my right side, like someone much shorter than me just walked up. For reference, I'm 4'11" and a half, okay? So we're talking short. Whatever this was only came up to about my waist. I see this short, dark shape at my side, like a small person made entirely out of shadow. And it's not just that I saw it, I felt it. The same way you feel a kid sidle up next to you when they want attention, but don't speak yet. So I look down, and the second my eyes move toward it, it reacts. The shadow, this little figure, bolts. Like a child who just got caught doing something they weren't supposed to do. It ran away from me, quick, kind of hunched, like it was embarrassed or scared. I swear it even looked like it was holding something close to its chest, almost like a stuffed rabbit or some soft toy. And then it was just gone. A few days later, I was working a slower shift and ended up chatting with the director's daughter. Let's call her Chloe. She helps out at the spa sometimes, kind of on and off, so she knows everyone and everything. What I didn't know until that day is that Chloe is absolutely obsessed with the hotel's ghost stories. Like, she collects them. We're talking near the front desk of the spa, and I go, "Okay, so I saw something weird a couple nights ago." And I tell her about the dispensary room, how I always feel people walking in and out. And then I described the little shadow. I even mentioned how it looked like it was holding a stuffed animal or something. She gets this really intense look on her face, leans in, and asks, "Did it feel like a little girl or a little boy?" And I just kind of shrugged because, honestly, I had no idea. It was literally just a shadow. No face, no clothes, no details. Just height, shape, and that tiny silhouette of something clutched in its arms. So I tell her, "I don't know. I couldn't tell. It was just small." That's when Chloe tells me something I wish I had known after I quit. not while I was still working there. She goes, "Okay, so this building used to be a hospital a long time ago. Not just a regular hospital, a place where they treated a lot of sick kids during an outbreak. Apparently, there was a brother and sister who stayed here. They used to play hide and seek in the halls all the time. One day, the little girl passed away, and ever since then, people say they've seen a small girl wandering around asking, 'Have you seen my brother?' And I just stare at her. Because here's the thing, I had no idea about that story. No one had told me anything about kids, or a hospital, or a girl looking for her brother. The only ghost I knew about was the heartbroken bride. But what I saw, the height, the way it moved, how it ran away like a shy kid, even the way it seemed to be holding a stuffed toy, lined up way too well with what she was saying. I remember actually getting goosebumps standing there in my spa uniform, thinking, what did I see then? Was that the little girl? Or did my brain just make something up? On my mom's side of the family, stuff like this isn't new. They've always had stories, seeing things, hearing things, feeling presences. So I grew up not really being a skeptic, but also not someone who sees full, clear ghosts in, like, high definition. For me, it's always been shadow people, or a shift in the room, or that heavy feeling of not being alone. And that's the part that sticks with me. Because I didn't go into that dispensary thinking about ghost kids or tragic hospital stories. I just wanted to finish cleaning and go home. And yet, I saw this small shadow at my side, felt it there, and watched it run away like a child. So, did I actually see a little girl who used to play hide and seek in that building? Or was my mind just filling in shadows because I already knew the place was haunted? Honestly, I still don't know. But I can tell you this. After that conversation with Chloe, I never stayed late alone in that spa again if I could help it. And every time I walked past that dispensary room, I caught myself wanting to look down and say, if you're there, I hope you found your brother. So, it's just after midnight here, like 12:45 a.m., and this has been my night so far. I live on this tiny Dutch Caribbean island, kind of tucked away on a hill overlooking the sea. It's usually super peaceful, breezy, quiet, almost storybook. Tonight it's just me. I'm 30, and my buddy Leo, he's 35. We'd both finished a long day at work and decided to hang out at my place, just to unwind, talk nonsense, and listen to music. Nothing special. Totally normal night. At least, it was supposed to be. A few weeks ago, though, something happened that I didn't tell him about right away. It was just me and my dog Nala at home. She's my sweet little shadow. Usually sleeps like a rock at the foot of the bed. In the middle of the night, she suddenly jumps up, stares at this one corner of the bedroom, and just locks in on it. Then she starts growling. This low, serious growl I've never heard from her before. Her fur stands up along her back, and she's trembling, but won't look away from that corner. I swear to you, the air in the room felt different. Heavy. It gave me full body chills. I turned on the light, checked everything. Closet, under the bed, the hallway. Nothing. But I didn't tell Leo about it then. I just kind of stuffed it down and tried to forget it. Fast forward to tonight. We're on one of our little breaks from talking about life and complaining about work. We're sitting on the couch, and I decide to tell him that story about Nala losing it in the middle of the night. I'm laughing it off. Like, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but listen to this. And he just nods, like it's the most normal thing in the world. Then he goes, real calm. Oh yeah, those spirits that fly around the streets at night. I've seen one by your place before. I'm like, excuse me? What? He says, one night I drove past your building and saw this dark shape, like a shadow with edges, lift off from near your balcony and glide over my car. Didn't feel bad or anything. It just didn't notice me. He said it so casually, like he was telling me he saw a bat. Since then, little things around my apartment have been off. Not scary in-your-face stuff, just weird. I'll put my keys by the front door like I always do, and later they're on the kitchen counter. A book I left on the nightstand will be on the couch. Nothing's gone missing, nothing broken. It's just like something is rearranging my life by 2 inches at a time. So, tonight, around 10:30 p.m., I let Nala out into the backyard. There's this shared path behind the apartments carved right into the mountain, all backed up against a rock wall. It's quiet out there, just the wind and the trees usually. Suddenly she starts barking. Not her, someone's at the gate bark. This frantic, non-stop bark, like she's trying to chase something off. I don't want to annoy the neighbors, so I rush outside, grab her, and bring her in, telling her, hey, it's okay, even though I'm not sure I believe myself. By 11 p.m., Leo and I are in the bathroom, of all places, being idiots, brushing our teeth, making faces in the mirror, joking around. We're laughing, and then in the middle of that, I hear it, clear as day, right outside the bathroom window. A voice says, hello. I froze. I felt my heart jump into my throat. I slowly look at Leo and I'm mouthing, who is outside my window? My brain is already trying to figure out which neighbor would be messing with us. But Leo is looking at me with this confused, almost spooked expression. And he goes, you heard hello? I nod. He shakes his head and says, no, I heard a growl. That's when my stomach dropped. He dashes outside to check. I follow him to the back door and we both stand there listening. Nothing. No footsteps on the path, no gate closing, no rustling. Just the wind and the faint sound of the sea. Now, to explain the layout, my apartment is on a hill. All the back doors from this row of apartments open onto the same narrow path that hugs the mountain. On one side, rock wall. On the other, the drop down to the street. You can't just pop up there and disappear quietly. You'd have to walk past at least one of the doors, and the gravel always crunches. You hear people. We heard absolutely nothing. My first thought is, okay, maybe my next door neighbor is playing a prank. Like, hey, keep it down, I wake up early. I even call out softly, hello, anyone there? No response, no laughter, no scurrying away, just silence. We go back inside, and now that I'm paying attention, I start hearing the usual sounds that I always brush off. The raspy scrapes and little thuds on the roof above my bedroom. I tell myself it's the monkeys, or iguanas, or those tiny watch me lizards that like to hang around. I've been blaming them for everything since I moved here. But then I think, at this hour, the monkeys and iguanas are usually settled. And those little watch me lizards? They chirp, sure, but they're tiny. They don't make tapping sounds on concrete walls. Yet tonight, the taps on the back wall keep happening. Soft, irregular, like knuckles, not claws. Leo sits down and looks at me seriously. He says, whatever that is, it probably went up the mountain. Now don't ever say hello back if you hear it again. If it's a spirit and you greet it, you're inviting it in. He says he doesn't feel anything malicious from it, more like a curious, wandering presence. Friendly, he calls it. Just passing through. I'm sitting there thinking, I don't care if it's friendly. It spoke right outside my bathroom window. Right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm still hearing the occasional scuff above me. Nala is curled up tight against my leg on the bed, but every now and then she suddenly jumps down, runs to the back door like she's charging at something, then comes back, unsettled. Her ears are up, and she's pacing in this restless way that makes it really hard for me to pretend everything is normal. I do believe in the paranormal, I always have. But that voice was so clear. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't in my head. It It sounded like someone standing right there, smiling, saying hello through the slats of the bathroom window. So now my brain is stuck between two equally creepy possibilities. One, there was an actual person outside my bathroom window at 11 p.m. on a narrow mountain path, leaving no footsteps and no trace. Or two, it was exactly what Leo thinks it was, a spirit. One I accidentally talked back to. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I keep hearing that voice again, light and cheerful. Hello?